Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best Book Club, the podcast where I discuss the best stories with the best minds in the community. On this episode, I'll be discussing Hailey the Bully by MagniPulls. With me, I have Hans Gutherson, possibly the most vocal of fans of this story that I've heard. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, my friend. Always excited to chat about this story.
Yeah, and it's been at least a year since we talked about an actual story.
Too
I
long.
think that's wild.
Yeah. I'm
But
glad to be
anyway.
back. It's been too long.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing I got multiple ideas then. But anyway, the first chapter for Hailey the Bully was posted on June 25th, 2019, and collectively the story has almost 314,000 views between its 5 chapters and one side story. And like the name suggests, the story is about Hailey Fortis. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that last name, but her attempting to change the status quo for the better. And through her journey, comes to understand 3 things: that the most important change comes from within, that tools are neutral and can be used for both good and evil, and that no matter where you go, wedgies are an ever present part of society and entirely inescapable.
I love that. That's beautiful. I've got a big smile on my face, especially for the last one. That's grand. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So you've talked about this story, I don't know how many times now, Hans, and
Yeah.
probably more often than not on every episode that you've been in. And I don't know why it took me so long to decide to do an episode on it, but here we are, finally, after more than 70 episodes.
Yeah. I've been a champion of this story for a long time. Not only because
Like,
I was a beta reader on some early parts of it, but that helped, I think, too. Because I
uh-huh.
could tell right away, Magni Pulls. We struck up a friendship. I guess like around the time he was sort of writing this, somewhere in there. Because I was rereading Camp No Name, and I
Mm,
reached out just and commenting, saying like I was really enjoying rereading it, and I could see what he was going for, and some of the vision. And even at that time, we didn't no one knew the sort of scope he was going for, perhaps not even himself, because Haley the Bully fits into this much larger MCU verse of stories that he creates. And MCU not just because of its cultural impact, but there's literally a Captain America Civil War, like, homage that we see in some of the Fuchsia Freaks stuff, where like the camps are drawn, and it's very much Civil War like inspired. And then so like
yeah.
Haley the Bully fits into this broader sort of universe in a very interesting place with a lot of really cool themes and stuff. But I've been promoting it. Yeah, when we did our episode on endings on the podcast, I mentioned Haley the Bully, and I feel like there are other instances. And
Every time we brought up favorites, you talked
yeah,
about it.
that's that one exactly right. And so I would champion it. I would tell, folks like AP, like, you have to read this story, it is such a great love letter to the community. And not only because it has an Anime Penny's reference, which he got quite a kick out
Yep.
of, but also just because like there's few stories that I think are such a great homage to the community and to its writers and to what we are at our best and what we sort of hope for as a community and as
Mm,
individuals within it. So any chance to get to chat about it is a delight for me. So again, I'm just
yeah.
honored to be here.
And now we finally have a full episode to talk about it. So this is the story that won MagniPulls, the Ongoing Story of the Year award for
Yes.
2019, and one of his truly impressive catalog that earned him the Writer of the Year award for the same year.
Yes.
He was doing some very heavy lifting that year for the community.
It's true. He was, yeah. And then when he won, he wrote this very delightful story with
Yeah,
Haley. Yeah, which is very
he
fun,
did.
where she accepts her reward, which is very nice.
Mhm. Just getting right into the actual story, one of my favorite things about it, and something that I'm sure we're gonna keep circling back to, is that it is chock full of consequences. They're not doomsday apocalyptic level consequences, but rather small personal ones that enable a greater change within a person. And that sort is possibly the most engaging and enjoyable to witness. It doesn't take a ton of mental effort to remember all the different plot lines and how close the world is going to end or anything like that, just
Mhm. Mhm.
the
Yeah,
characters themselves and
absolutely.
what's most important to them. It is beautiful to read and
It
experience.
is. Yeah, because when you read some of his later stuff, like, Wedgie Witch War and that sort of arc in the universe, like, the stakes are much higher. It's like
Mhm.
cartoony how wedgies are, as you say, ever present, but to an extent that, it's like there literally is supernatural forces at play. And
Yeah.
obviously it becomes a very different kind of story where, and like the Fuchsia Freaks has some of this too, and these hints that like they're working for like this sort of very powerful being that is beyond reality and stuff, and just some of the stakes they get up to. But yeah, Haley the Bully feels way more grounded and in a lot of very deliberate ways. Obviously stuff with Michelle, one of the best characters in Wedgie's stories, but like in that sort of trauma that we managed to get into, like there's a sort of
Mhm.
realism there. And then yeah, it's many of those great, themes that I'm of course a big fan of. Like, there's sort of parallels to Lucy and Daniela because you see the consequences of your action. You get the power you want, but you realize you lose something else in the meantime. And like so, and
Absolutely.
I don't want to get jumped too far ahead, but yeah, everything you say is like there's beautiful themes in it. It really is the sort of best love layer to the community because it is so down to earth and realistic. And you manage to get all these different characters and references from very disparate stories, and some of them have superpowers, and some of them it goes on and on and on, and yet it feels cohesive. It feels like you managed to really capture the best of what the stories and the characters are about, while getting away from some of the crazier kind of elements that some writers sort of fall into, where Haley is now like Wedgie Queen of the World or something like insane, or like
Yeah.
anything beyond sort of just like we're in a place, a limited period of time passes, and you get to see her figure out who she is. Like it's this great coming of age story, really, of she discovering and finding herself and choosing who she's going to be, which is obviously such a core facet of sort of like young adult sort of fiction, and that's captured perfectly in this story.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah, you said it very well. I don't really know what to call it, the appearance or the formatting or whatever it is, but whenever you actually go to the page for each chapter, every other one switches from the super unreadable light green background and
Yeah.
very light purple text to the actually readable
Yes.
modern version. There, in case anybody wants to actually go and read it again, there's a workaround to this where you just highlight all the text, which will turn the text black on a more regular green. But do you know why some stories were affected by this and so many weren't?
No, I don't have a good answer to why the randomness of DA and its sort of chaos. We always have known they don't like writers, to the point where the app is unusable if you're a writer. I think the app's finally gone now, like for
Is it
mobile.
really?
I believe so.
It sucked. It was so
It was
bad.
terrible. It was a nightmare, especially if you were a writer. It was
Yes.
basically unusable, and trying to search stuff was a pain, and like the platform's never really been friendly to writers, and that was one of the most egregious things that happened, where many stories were sort of struck by this. And at the time there were some people trying to figure out like if you do this it wouldn't affect it, or you have to go in and like I don't know, might have been as simple as like you just go in and you edit your story, you don't even have to change anything, but if you just go in and edit it that might fix it. But it seems just like a total randomness thing. I have no idea if it's like maybe where you pasted the story from maybe affects
Uh-huh.
it. Who knows? DA is one of its many mysteries and painful
Yeah.
ones for writers. So certainly makes going through it, tougher. But it's if you can get over that, like you said, it's definitely
Yeah.
by far one of the best stories in the community and worth a read.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a little tough on the eyes, but
Yes.
just either copy it to another, uh,
Yes. Yep.
word processing, whatever they're called,
Yeah,
word or
reading it
whatever.
on mobile I found wasn't as bad,
No?
interestingly. Maybe because your eyes are more used to like Maybe the
Smaller
contrast?
screen,
I'm
so it's
not
not
sure.
showing as much at a
Maybe
time?
that's what it was. Maybe that's what
I
it
don't
was.
know.
I found it didn't bother me as much, but and maybe I'm just like have it like inured myself to the sort of painfulness of it.
God, it's just, such an ugly color clash, but anyway,
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, Magni made a note at the beginning of the first chapter, thanking the community for 250K page views and 700 plus watchers, and now almost 7 years later, he has
Yeah.
over double the page views and
Yeah.
over 4 times the watchers, with
Yeah.
554,000 views and 3,000 plus watchers, which is 100% deserved, every single one of them.
Totally. Yeah, now he's like quasi-retired, unfortunately, but he like is
He
still
kinda came
doing a
back,
fair
he's
bit of
still doing
stuff.
things.
So like I consider it some kind of quasi-retirement because like the first pinned post there is him retiring in the announcement, but he's
Yeah.
written some stories since then, and he even said then
Mhm.
like I'll probably come back and do some stuff, and he has, and he's had something posted early April, so. It's thankfully still around, but we might not be getting any more Haley the Bullies in the future, unfortunately.
That's okay, because we already have such an incredible not even just Hailey the Bully, but so many of Magni's stories are just incredible, and we gotta talk
Hmm.
about many more of them.
For sure.
Haley's last name is Fortis or Fortis or however you say it, which incidentally is the name of one of the antagonists in the 2011 heist thriller In Time, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. I've mentioned
Oh,
it before in the podcast. It's such a
okay.
good movie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is that
I
the? Am
init
I thinking of the Justin Timberlake one
Yes.
with?
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, that was a good movie. That was cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you travel through, not travel through time. You have a certain amount of time, and you can like take time
Yes.
from other people. It's very clever. I like
It's
that. It's
yeah,
a
it
very
tur
cool
it
premise.
time as currency is very literal.
Yes, yes.
Simple
Yeah.
as that.
Nice. Yeah, and the interesting thing too, fortis is Latin for strong.
Really? Okay.
And so like obviously he does something obviously very like literal with like that name because she's obviously, and think about who calls her Fortis, right? It's the villains, it's the
Yep.
baddies who say like
Yeah.
Fortis, and then Sylvia, whose last name is what? Foster. She's
And that's
nurturing. She fosters things, she supports her. She always just calls her Haley. So but yeah,
right.
like Fortis Latin for strong, and you'd get to see that in her. So like he was doing very
Yeah,
clever things there with the names.
absolutely. And I didn't even think about it, but Sylvia is the name of the female lead in, the character in Time, Sylvia Weiss.
Ah, he might have been inspired
He
by that. He might have
he
watched
might
In Time because that happens.
maybe,
100%. Very cool. Good
maybe,
catch.
who knows? That'd be cool. Uh,
Very cool.
but yeah, I initially looked at the amount of chapters and thought it'd be pretty quick read since there are only 5 and plus 1
No.
award acceptance, but
Yeah,
damn, these are some meaty chapters. They
very much.
legitimately deserve to be called chapters.
For sure. For sure.
Uh,
They're surprisingly long. If you haven't read in a
awesome.
while, there's a lot. And you can look at the story and you can be like, "Oh, they're just like a series of wedgie fights, like one after the other." But I mean, the cool thing is like that's not exactly untrue, but they're all in to progress the story and character. And one of the best examples I think we have in stories of something where those fights actually do always like progress the character. Haley's pushed in a direction. She's deciding where she's going with it. Who she wants to be as the result of these fights, whether she sort of wins or loses, and how that sort of cements her choices. And it's a really cool way to sort of blend wedgies into it in a sort of very action focused way, because the story is very action packed, which is
Mhm.
interesting too. There's some moments of like more quieter reflection, but that's usually maybe right after a wedgie fight, right before she's about to get into a fight, and it's a really unique take on that approach.
I mean, I would say that, like, right before she get about to get into a fight, the action is rising. It's ramping up.
It's true.
You're not calming down. You're not cooling off. You're leading right into it. So,
It's true,
I
yeah.
they
He does it
they
well because there's, like, the music, that's used
yeah.
very well in the story. Music's a tricky thing because
It
when you're writing, you can't hear it. So it's like, am I hearing the right thing? You could overthink it, but obviously music plays such a big role here, and so there's
Yeah,
moments where she's like, "Do I, not engage? Do I walk away from this fight?" And she chooses to sort of be a hero and makes those heroic choices throughout.
yeah,
It really is just like this like prototypical like superhero story, but in a very grounded setting, which again
yeah,
like is unusual in the wedgie community in some ways.
yeah, absolutely. It kinda reminds me a bit of the how the Tale of Wedgie Girl did it, but
Yes,
the
I was thinking the same thing, but that one, goes like above and beyond. I mean, in a way, it doesn't
literal
because
superhero.
like Haley the Bully, like those wedgies, are sort of on par with some of the stuff you see there. But yeah,
Mhm,
she dons like an identity as a sort of hero for the downtrodden, much like Haley does. But it
yeah,
it goes harder on the sort of superhero-y sort of tropes that MagniPulls, will do. There's a moment in a story. I think it's in maybe one of the Calypso Academy chapters, or maybe
mm.
it's a Hailey the Bully, and when like cheerleaders run into like Avril Lavigne cheer that they're doing, and some characters like, "Why do I hear boss music?" You
Yeah,
remember that? And what's that from?
uh-huh.
And
Um, I don't know, I think that's it's from something, but
yeah,
it's just one of those
it's from
internet
Calypso
memes that
Academy, maybe I
it
think,
was
and
used so much that it kind of eclipsed the original.
yeah, I think it was Calypso
Can't
can be
remember.
potentially. But anyway, so like, you get some of those moments where it feels like a sort of superhero-y action thing, like the final confrontation between Michelle and her, and just some of like her race to go save Sylvia in the end, things like
Mm,
that. But again, it's always more grounded and down to earth, which is admirable.
yeah, absolutely. I really you what you said made me think of this just now. I really love the way that Magni sets Haley apart, even just from the way she makes choices.
Mhm.
Like, she doesn't say or think, "All right, time to fuck some bullies up." She
Yeah,
just
yeah,
puts in her headphones, and that's when you know it's go time.
that's true.
And honestly,
Yeah.
this Haley the Bully might be the closest I've read to a story that feels like a video game.
Yes,
'Cause there are
I would agree.
there are many stories out there now that feel kinda like a movie or a TV show or something like a
Yeah.
different medium, but this is the only one that I can think of that feels like a video game, especially when she's putting in the headphones to get down to business. It feels like, a fighter.
Yes. For sure. Yeah, I want Street Fighter Haley the Bully edition. I get to
Yeah, that'd
play
be
as her,
perfect.
fight, Mortal Kombat style with wedgies and all that here. But it
Absolutely.
certainly feels like that because, like I said, the vast majority of story is her fighting all these different
Mhm.
characters, and it's not often that like a character is sort of introduced in like the story. One of the ones he references when they're not like fighting her with wedgies or getting a wedgie from someone else who she sort of fights and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and so it definitely has that sort of feel where she does arm herself for combat with the music, and the music it's even better than that because it plays a few different roles. It kind of reveals what she's thinking and also hints at the secret that she has. And rereading the story, you see the crazy early hints that he leaves. That the first time
Mm.
around, I did not catch
We're
any
gonna
of them,
talk
but
about that.
rereading them, rereading it, it's crazy how nobody caught the twist. Like, it's crazy.
Mm. We will talk about that, but once we get to the
Yes.
when the actual twist happens in the story, then we'll talk about it, but I have some thoughts on it. Uh, but yeah, honestly, you saying Mortal Kombat, it would work so perfectly as like a Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat or Guilty Gear or whatever, because what's the common trope? Win in the game, lose in the cutscene. It would work so perfectly for
It's
something
true.
like that,
It's
and then
true.
all the story
Yes.
happens in the
Yeah.
cutscenes, so because
Mhm.
that's very cliche. You just watch all the story happen, and then the gameplay is just the fights. It would
Yep.
work it's like a glove. That would work so
100%.
well.
100%. Yep.
Mm. Now, Magni references a ton of different characters and writers as you brought up. And my favorites are the ones where he inserts the reference into someone's dialogue. Like Come on, are you just going to sleep all of today? 'Cause it
Yes.
doesn't quite sound right, so it's
No.
pretty obvious, but
Yep,
it also works. It's kind of funny. I love when
it
he
is.
does that kind of
It's
I love it when
brilliant.
he
He's
does
got
it
a
like that.
great sense of humor, and that's one of the
Absolutely.
funnest ways that you see it in the story.
Yeah, very fun. When Taylor says it's almost magical how that fell apart so fast, in reference to the extremely failed bullying attempt that Haley and Taylor witnessed when they arrived for their first day at their new school, Calypso Academy, I legitimately thought for a minute that magic would actually play a role. And having finished the story, I'm not really sure why he had Taylor say that. It seems like a bit of a red herring for I don't know what he's trying to distract us from, especially since I also thought it was very weird how easily that bullying failed. It just felt like it fell apart for no reason, really.
Yeah, we do see magic come up later and around,
Yeah,
like, it's hinted at earlier. Later stories, like, it's a huge part. There's magical characters who, like
really?
yeah, and there's
Okay.
so that's probably a subtle hint there in some ways, because apparently and I mean, we, sure, we'll say it was apparently from like the very beginnings of the story. There's these like very nerdy characters who I think show up. Anna and
Mhm.
Reina, I think they might show up in Hailey the Bully. One of them also has like magic,
Oh.
and that's like something that's only revealed in the very last moment of like the final Calypso Academy chapter ever, like of the whole universe. And but like there is magic that appears and comes in, and there's this wedgie witch basically who in another cool tribute to the community he does, and basically travels very briefly to different stories and things, and like so you and like wedgies and magic become like a big part of the universe later, so that
Mhm.
could certainly be like a hint to
That's
some
what
of
it is
that
then.
that's like coming
Absolutely.
in later in the universe, because like I said, Haley the Bully fits kind of in the middle near the endish of like this
Mm.
much larger universe that includes Camp Noname, and like so stuff from that's obviously mentioned, and then later on, you see Haley the Bully and Michelle, and like the basically culmination of their arcs and everybody's arcs play out later on in some of these like Wedgie Witch War kind of chapters and things, where like it's basically a huge magic fueled war, basically
Mm.
between good and evil.
Okay. So, yeah, that makes complete sense then. It is just a hint for future plot points. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Oh
Alright.
yeah.
And that's very in line with Magni's writing.
Mm-mm.
Alright.
Yeah.
Very much the Marvel of our community.
It is, yeah. Like you could say DC, whatever, but like clearly, like when you
No,
read
DC
Fuchsia
doesn't know what it's
Freaks,
doing. Marvel
yeah,
gets how to do an
yeah.
extended universe.
Exactly, and then when you read Magni and you read the chapter of Fuchsia Freaks, which is very, very, very clearly like Civil War, like remake, like Captain America Civil War, that you
Mhm.
see, you're like, yeah, like he was feeling it as we all were in Marvel sort of peak, and he was
Yeah.
doing his own take on it there, and it
Mhm.
works.
Yeah,
It works really well in his story for sure.
100%. Have you ever heard of a school that does their orientation a week before the school year starts?
Yeah, I feel there's some stuff that
Really
does
early.
happen. There's some stuff that happens that's kind of so, but that did stick out to me because there was one of the hints of the twist that I was like 100% like there's something that I won't say it. We can go into it later, but I was like, but then when he introduced that fact, I'm like, wait a minute, does that like mess up my thinking? But I don't think it does because there's no like Haley isn't involved in any wedgies we hear in that part, like as far as we know.
Mhm.
But like I think her sister does get one there. But anyway, that'll make more sense when we talk about the twist and stuff. But yeah, that when I read that, I was like, huh, it's a week earlier, so it's like, is that really her first day? Because they sort of hype up it's the first day. But I was like, if she's going to this orientation, so I mean, they could have done more with that. Interestingly, but you don't even need it really, too, because like
Yeah.
sometimes the first day is just a chill first day at school because you're just getting oriented,
That
like,
is the
it could have
orientation
been that.
generally.
It could have
Yeah,
been that, yeah. The fact she's there a week earlier is unusual in some ways.
yeah, absolutely, it's very strange, but yeah. So if Haley is able to easily handle Alexis and Vanessa as she does while saying she's rusty, then I can only imagine how good she must have been at defending herself in her prime. We do see her at the beginning of the story when she's been dealing with bullies, presumably for years on end, and
Mm.
she's very easily taken care of, though there are 6 people in that group, to be fair.
Yeah, it's
It ki
true.
it kinda
It
reminds me of the villain Sensui from the manga Yu Yu Hakusho, where he was the first spirit detective and so used to fighting groups of demons that in a one-on-one fight against the main character Yusuke, he mops the fucking floor with him, as well as
Wow.
Hiei, Kurama, and Kuwabara at the height of their abilities at that point. Yeah, it's hard to tell if she's actually really good or not that good, but the 6 people is pretty difficult
Yeah.
to
We
come
get
up
the
against.
sense in the very beginning that, like, she isn't, like, a fighter of bullies,
Not
really.
at
Like,
all.
we and so, like, when that's kinda introduced kinda quickly, I guess it's almost like whatever they call it, like a bullser in the community where they're like, a bully loser, and, like, maybe she tries to fight back and she's just kinda tough, but, like, never manages it, but she sort of sees herself that way. And I suppose you could look at it that way and say, like, she has this view of herself, but who she actually is and what her, like, actions, reflect about her, like, that becomes clearer as she sort of makes these choices where she has more, like, agency. Because in the beginning, she's just sort of, like, pulled along through overwhelming odds, and she, like, doesn't have an opportunity to kind of,
Yeah.
like, make choices compared to, like, just getting bullied in, like,
Mm,
overwhelming situations. But yeah, like, she's able to fight 2 at once, she loses other fights with other people. Like, her power level, to speak in, like, Sylvia's terms, is a bit unclear. It
yeah.
feels like at the end, she might be, like, very powerful, like A tier maybe but, like, um,
Yeah. I mean,
but
maybe
certainly it's a little, like, back and forth, which I
uh-huh.
suppose is realistic. Some people, are gonna be super great, and sometimes you just lose a fight.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Haley it's not like Haley is world class from the beginning of when she starts to legitimately fight back, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised if the reason she's got 6 people ganging up on her is because
Mm.
the bullies learned that they needed to do that because Haley would fight back, and
Very
this
good.
is much easier.
Very good.
That could
I
possibly
like
be it.
that. Yeah, that's great. I think that's really good.
Yeah. Another great reference is to Between Two Cheeks with the line, I really love this one. These things just make me laugh. After losing the fight, Michelle and her group had enjoyed a bit of playtime, which meant that both of them had their underwear firmly lodged up between two cheeks.
As if you could do it between one or something. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. Yeah, great reference. Great catches on these for
Yeah.
sure.
It's just the way that he doesn't even it kind of feels like he doesn't even try to make it sound like it's being naturally said, which makes me laugh. I
Mhm.
think it
Yes.
works very well. Um,
Yep.
and it would have been very surprising to me if it had ended without Ashley and Luna showing up. It's pretty crazy how quickly Between Two Cheeks' characters blew up. They're
Yes.
modern classics.
Yes.
Do you know the history of Ashley and Luna? I don't know, like, how they started or all I know is one day I was just aware that they existed.
So I talked to him in the past. I did like a Q&A with him at one
Mhm.
point, and we kept in touch for a bit until he, disappeared into the ether. He was very much like a fan of Saturday morning cartoons and that sort of vibe. And you see that completely in Ashley and Luna, just these two polar opposite sitcom situational sort of characters who run into the same type of situations over and over again where one's getting perpetually bullied but is always optimistic and happy, and one's the sort of goth darker bully, but they both have good hearts, and they come together, and when it matters,
Mhm.
there's like a sweetness, and I think that's what really endeared them to people. I think how like
Mhm.
clearly delineated they are, plus having art like really early out the gate is a major help in propelling those characters to the huge success that they had, how clear they were, and how they were basically always accompanied by art. So you
Mhm.
could always have a visual of them. They were always sort of sticking in your mind, either through his good stories or, the excellent art he had from the likes of like Bloom and others and things. And he also just did so many creative things, like he had experience coding, so he made those visual novel games,
Mm,
and not always with Ashley and Luna, but most of them were. And they were really fun too. So like he really was the first to sort of build a franchise around these characters and be able to sort of monetize his characters very effectively, and he did do it with great efficiency and effectiveness. And he could have
I
kept going. Like, I don't know if there's,
yeah.
an ending to just characters like that that sort of stand out. And the only time it sort of backfired was when he took what people liked about the characters, and that, often cited example of a story where they're in like a babysitting like daycare, which in itself
Yep.
was problematic, even though he didn't think that, or I think he sort of, thought maybe that wasn't the issue, but it was. But in a
Mm.
way, what concerned the community more, some members of the community more, was when like Ashley is basically pushed to her limit. She's like getting bullied a lot, and she sort of loses her cool, and she basically, there's like a dramatic sort of shift where she loses her happy go lucky nature, and it's almost like a mind break thing, I think they call it,
Oh.
where she's just sort of like, you know like, isn't the same person anymore, and people really don't like that. So that story was taken down, and I think for a few reasons, like I said. But if you
Mm,
can maintain, what people like in those characters, and obviously they can grow, and we saw that a little bit with Luna, even in one of those first like early Christmas stories, where she isn't just a bully. She's nice to her sister at times, and sort of generous and kind, and makes up when
mm,
she like goes too far and stuff. But to like say like Ashley's now, hates people, and isn't, good anymore, and if it's not in like a, one-off superhero story like he did, where like Ashley's evil or whatever for fun, stuff like that. So they really took off very quickly, very suddenly, and I think, like I said, it was the art. It really was that Saturday morning cartoon, just fun
mhm.
vibes that I think, a part of us in the community, we really do just like when the characters are clear and fun, and you can hop into a story and get, these familiar characters you enjoy watching.
Yeah.
um and they had a little backstory, and there was a little things, but this whole idea of like a blended family of, trying to make friends with these people, and then obviously the stakes kept getting risen and stuff in later stories, which I think kept us all engaged, and it was just cool to
Yeah.
see the characters. But yeah, so it really took off very quickly as they were doing it.
Yeah, it's like The Simpsons.
Yes, very much like The Simpsons, where they can do really crazy stuff, but at the end of the day, it comes down to like the relationships and the messages,
Mhm.
and the humor, and there was good humor in their stories too, for
Yeah,
sure. So it was
and
a really a recipe for success.
you don't need to, uh, catch every single story or every single episode or anything. You can
No,
just jump in whenever you feel like and jump
absolutely,
around, do whatever.
absolutely, yeah.
Alright. I woulda loved to actually see Michelle and her cronies deal with Haley and Sylvia in the bathroom. Though I do really
Yeah.
like how Haley is still on the bottom of the pecking order initially, instead
Yes.
of instantly rising to the top.
Yeah,
It
it's great.
Alice gives Ashley a messy wedgie during lunch, and while I'm definitely not a fan of them, I'm glad that this one was pretty quickly skimmed over.
Mhm.
Food and genitals is a recipe for grossing out a lot of people.
Well said.
Yeah, wish it would go away, but some people like it for some reason.
Yeah.
Uh, it looks like Calypso Academy is yet another school in the wedgie community to fall into the ridiculous cliche of there being either no teachers anywhere or they're
Yes.
so ineffective that they might as well be.
Yeah, it's true.
Why does the staff just sit idly by while so many of their students are tortured on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and it even goes further than the school, and like it's, outside of the school, it's constant in just the world of like MagniPulls. It's everywhere, and people aren't like, do anything to stop this kind of epidemic. Although I think he might do some of that. But yeah, in Calypso Academy, specifically to your question, it's wild. Like, where are the teachers? We have no idea. You know, there is like a principal who shows up at some point, not in that story, but in the broader universe, who's like, our solution to this, I don't know if you read this chapter of story by him, is to basically lock everybody in the school for like a sleepover event.
What?
As you
So
can
they can pond?
imagine, as you can imagine, That does not work out very well.
It completely
Of
backfires.
course, completely backfires. I think the principal, like, who's a woman, even ends up catching some wedgies, I think, from Michelle, who's just like,
Of
you know,
course. So
because you're
dumb.
all in this situation. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just they're ever present, as you said,
Is that the
omnipresent
Fuchsia
in
Freaks?
the world. I believe that's Fuchsia Freaks, and the chapter's called Locked In. If you just look up
Yeah.
Locked In, you'll
So
probably find it. I think it's a Fuchsia Freaks
such a
chapter.
ridiculous premise.
I know, it's crazy. It's wild. So you see it, like, to the most extremes in his stories, and Haley the
Yeah.
Bully's like a perfect quintessential example of it, where it's just like there's nothing gonna stop these wedgies, unless
Yeah.
it's like
They're a force of
the
nature.
change is going to come from the students, like, is what Haley thinks, and like if she can protect people, but obviously she realizes very quickly, like, that's not the solution. Like, giving
Mm,
more wedgies is not gonna stop the wedgies. So
right.
and becoming a bully isn't gonna, like, gonna give her what she wants in any way, including, like, protection from wedgies. Because there's always gonna be somebody bigger or more powerful, as we see with Michelle, who, like, isn't Haley the Bully, at least, like, the top giver. Who Haley does
Mm,
defeat, but through the power of a twist.
mm,
But we still, you get the assumption that, like, Michelle is still, like, number one S tier kind of thing.
yeah. Apparently even over the teachers, 'cause
Yes.
that's gotta be the only reason none of them intervene, because 'cause they're
That
afraid
might
they'll
be
get
it. They're
wedgies
too
too.
scared. Yeah, that's probably the answer. They all just have seen this, and they're like, "I'm staying out of it. I'm not paid enough for this to deal with any of this nonsense."
Yeah. It's pretty strange to me that every single character we see underwear of has some kind of ridiculous design or pattern. There seems to
Yeah.
be a ton of characters who are exceedingly arrogant in the case of the bullies, or
Yes.
willfully ignorant to reality in the case of the nerds.
Yes.
The bullies all seem to have this mentality of, I'm going to wear the most embarrassing underwear I own because there's no way I'll ever get a wedgie. And the
Yeah.
nerds seem to have the mentality of, I'm going to wear the most embarrassing underwear I own because I'm going to get wedgies anyway. So why not just wear what I want?
Why not? I like that. The nerds have it right. Yeah, and it
I
always backfires. That's the thing. No one's like, "Man, my choice really worked out today." I
yeah.
made the right choice with the underwear.
Mhm.
It's always got to be something. It sticks in your mind though. It does stand out a bit when everybody's pair is like wild. It might lose some of that, like, power of, like, wow, what a
Yeah.
unique kind of pair. Like, that's really different, and, like, but it certainly is sort of a fun attention grabbing thing and easier to visualize, maybe, and sort of stands out in your mind, and that is a
Absolutely.
big part of the writing.
Mhm. I mean, if one character had plain underwear, then that would have stood out because
You're
everybody
right.
else has
You're right.
crazy designs.
That becomes the one you remember the most. Yes.
Yeah.
Good point. Yep.
Uh, yeah, I do kinda wish there had been a character that just wore pure white underwear, because
Yeah.
that's my favorite at
It's
the end of the
classic.
day.
Yeah. It's
The
classic for a
best, the
reason. Yeah.
best. Chapter 1 is really well done. It starts with an origin story and background, and then humble new beginnings, and the narrative action rises in a very satisfying way. It honestly feels like the old style of writing with modern sensibilities around editing and proofreading. In the description, Magni says, I decided that if a scene did not have wedgies as the focus, then it shouldn't be included, which is the best summation I've heard for how people used to write in the Wedgie Girls and early Lucky Fetish days.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because, like, obviously in those Lucky Fetish stories, most writers, with a few notable exceptions, they think of cool wedgie scenes and then they write them.
Mhm.
And then if the story gets a lot of popularity, maybe you write another wedgie scene, and you just
Right.
do it, and you keep going like that, and then you realize, as a lot of writers did, and as we saw, it still happens today. They just go like, "Oh, I'm out of ideas." Like, for them, there's only so many ways you can write wedgies when you sort of
Yeah.
start from that
And
perspective,
that's where the story ends.
and that's where the story ends. And but obviously with MagniPulls, he set out with this sort of plan in mind, and it really is focusing on, very streamlined, like, fights with wedgies, drive the
Mm.
character forward, more fights with wedgies, change the character, more fights. We end with the resolution of Haley as, like, a hero. And like
Yeah.
that, if to sort of simplify, to sort of, be reductive about it, like that's kind of the story, and it works really well, that structure. Because like,
Mhm.
the fights are all really well done. The story wouldn't work if the fights weren't really good, and it wouldn't work if the character aspects that the fights sort of help propel and change and shift, if that wasn't good. So the way he's able to balance both of these in a story that, like, takes a lot of internal conflict and makes it something external, where she's able to sort of work through stuff, through the fights, and the fights can sort of represent, the story at large, where she's fighting against something, she's fighting against herself, because like in all of it, it's like a fight against, who she is, who she wants to be, who she tells people she is, you know, and like, so there's fighting at the core of the story, and like he
Mm.
manages to balance that really well with like deeper character stuff that we know he's interested in, and also like great wedgies too throughout.
Yeah.
And like, and wedgies do carry the plot, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, it is the epitome of a wedgie story instead of a story with wedgies.
Mm.
This story would not make any sense if you took out the wedgies, and it ties the character growth and indirect detail and the wedgies together so well.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So thankfully, Magni put a list of references at the bottom of each
Yes.
chapter, at least the characters. There are other references that he makes throughout the story that I definitely did not catch all of them, but, the I didn't know if I do you would you like me to list them all? Because there's a lot of them, but I think it's very cool, the
If you
amount
want
of
to, yeah, it's your podcast. I'm
yeah.
just here for the
Alright, then I
vibes.
will, because I think it's very cool the amount of just background characters you wouldn't even if you were really paying attention.
Mhm.
So for chapter 1, he's got Lily the Magical Girl by Villain Girl 5, Nadia Kozlov by Benzene, Emma Hansen by Samtastic V3, Vanessa by Venom Sorcerer, Alexis by Epic Ninja 13X, High Velocity by Dodo Bird, Ashley by Mike the Hedgehog, Lilia by Angel Silva 23, Alice Skunks by Seseda, Becky Morales by Foolhorn, Azalea Warren by Break321, and Ciara Willpow by Arctime.
Yeah,
That
I
they
always
only
pronounce it as
recognize some of
Kara.
them.
I always pronounce it as Kara, the last one, but I'm not sure how
Really?
you
Because there's
pronounce
an
the
I
last.
there.
Yeah, probably just Ciara or something. I always thought it was like
That's
Kara Willpower or something.
I always say Ciara because of the I. It turns it into a S sound instead of a hard C.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. I'm surprised you never noticed that. Wow.
No, I just always thought it was like Kara or something. I don't know why I
Mm.
thought that.
Well, even if there wasn't the I there, apparently you're supposed to pronounce that as
Kiara?
Kara,
Yeah,
Kara. I
yeah,
say Kara if it's
yeah,
Cara
yeah.
or
You know I'm like that too.
yeah, hard. But
So
anyway,
yeah, it's real
um,
to me. It's Kiara.
no, it's Ciara. It's Ciara.
Yes.
It's
How
definitely
unusual.
Ciara
I like it.
or Cia. It
Yeah.
could be Sierra,
It was,
but I
yeah, it
say
could be
Ciara.
Sierra, yeah, it could be, yeah. I like, it was really cool seeing the high velocity references.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, that gets like a prolonged, reference, which
Yeah,
was really cool because that is a story that, in a lot of ways, doesn't get enough love.
it is quite a long story. I would like to do an episode on it, but it is very long to get through.
Yes, it is, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of funny to me how the bullies who give Sylvia a hanging wedgie in chapter 2 seem really nice comparatively. They respect Sylvia's belongings more than her, since they
yes.
seem very reluctant to disturb what she just put in her locker. Yet they fully intend to give her a massive wedgie and do something with the locker.
Yeah, some of that the humor comes from that kind of
Yeah.
contrast, like the unexpected elements that, you don't see coming, and that's a lot of
Absolutely.
this in this story. Like even in later chapters when, we get the Lucy and Daniela reference. So same sort of vibes, and it's just
Mhm.
like not what you expect of like, is she gonna fight? No, she's just chalking. Or
Yep.
even the Ashley and Luna when we do see them, and it's just like she does the kind of like puppy dog eyes thing, and it works, and it's just like
Mhm.
super cute, cinematic almost stuff where it's just like this is like wild. Like this is like perfectly capturing these characters, and it all just works somehow.
Mhm. Absolutely. Going along with that a little bit, once I got a bit into chapter 2, the story really started to feel as if Lucy and Daniela and the Tale of Wedgie Girl had a child, and it inherited the genes of the best of both stories. From
Yes.
Lucy and Daniela, you have the large cast with tons of bullies and a well-known bully and nerd being very close friends, though Haley rises to the top rather than already being there, unlike
Yes.
Daniela.
Yep.
And from the tale of Wedgie Girl, you have a new girl who is ambushed by a group of bullies in the beginning, being the origin story, to transition them into being a vigilante for nerd justice, amongst other comparisons. But it's
Yeah.
just very fun.
It is because like Haley the Bully is like, what if Lucy and Daniela was about Lucy rising to become a bully? Like, what if that was more of the story? Like,
Mhm.
and because Lucy, we see her sort of like do kind of what Haley does, like, and go through that sort of arc.
Mhm.
But like Haley from the beginning, she's like, more of a bully. She's tougher. She's more of
Absolutely.
this badass
More
character.
focused on what she's doing. She feels
Yes.
like she has more of a handle on it than Lucy.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. Lucy just sort of like kind of pushed, kind of persuaded, kind of like almost reluctantly kind of forced into it and sort of
Mhm.
embraces it. But yeah, but there's certainly, I can't read it without thinking like the parallels to like Lucy and Daniela there. Or yeah, like Wedgie Girl. It like maybe a little karate friends, a little bit, kind of, sort of, but mostly just in the relationship between the bully and the nerd, and obviously this sort of like role reversal, the bullies sort of being brought down. But you don't really see that in Haley the Bully. Like there's like a physical fight with Michelle, but we don't get the sense that like the wedgies are over. Or Michelle's going to like change in any way, like
Mhm.
from this. Um, so in that way, it kind of stands alone. But yeah, the comparisons you draw are spot on, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's sort of the more background ways that, Haley the Bully pays homage to what came before,
Mm,
instead of just,
absolutely.
"Here's the character from that story, here's the
Yes, it's
direct
true.
reference."
Yes.
This is more
It
in
does
the
it very
background, I like that.
literally, but it feels like weave throughout it are like themes that, at least in my work, like I said, are like I realized finally are very apparent, like friendships coming together because of wedgies, and like,
Yeah.
you know, Haley and Sylvia wouldn't have met if it's not for like these wedgies, and like their whole relationship is like basically dependent on where they both stand on wedgies, or where I should say where Haley stands on wedgies. Is she going to be a bully and use them, or is she going to turn to the path of like friendship? And like
Mhm.
wedgies is the through line throughout like the whole story and how she interacts with people and who she is, and like that's Lucy and Danielle in a lot of ways too, because Danielle is obviously like defined by being a bully, by giving wedgies, by like the sort of power and the status that she has as a sort of hot girl who is able to exert dominance, and like there's a certain power in that for sure. And like she feels that Haley, she gets a taste of that and what that's like, and she feels like she might have good intentions, but it's obviously becomes clouded by a lot of other factors there,
Mhm.
as well as her secret, and that sort of hangs over everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also reads like, we kinda did bring up Marvel before. It reads like Magni's Avengers: Infinity War/ Endgame, where it's the culmination of years of a narrative that weaves in and out of his various works.
Hmm.
And while it's definitely an enjoyable read, I don't think you can get the maximum level of enjoyment from it without being well versed in not just Magni's own work, but that of so many other writers at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes I did feel like I was missing out on some context, like I did while watching, uh, Infinity War for the first time, because I had not seen so many of the movies that came in
Yeah.
between at
Yes.
when I saw that movie,
Oof.
but mostly, I think he did a great job at making sure the reader could just read Haley the Bully and have a pretty solid understanding.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is that once I got to chapter 2, I really started to understand what you meant all the times you've called this story a love letter to the fetish.
Yes, it is. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, certainly. Like, there's tons of references that no one's gonna catch them all. Like,
Yeah.
because there's so many writers. He's got smaller ones in there, people who haven't even written, but maybe they create a character and stuff, and they just sort of get picked up, or they're just an artist and things. So many references. There's probably even ones we didn't catch that maybe were
Oh, yeah.
snuck in there more secretly, or there's like stuff weaved into the narrative. Like we catch these parallels, like you said, but maybe there's others we don't, and obviously, like in the final chapter, you see it where you realize like who she is and these choices she makes, and like it's one of the best, you know, versions of kind of like a heroic character using wedgies for good, and this arc that we've sort of seen in the community. Because like we could just have a bunch of wedgie fights, and she could just fight all these other characters, but it wouldn't be like a love letter in my mind. Like it would be cool. Be, oh great, look, it's another character. But the fact her character growth is so strong
Mm,
and who she is so interesting to look at, and the stories and the themes that are sort of wound into it, the way it's handled so perfectly, so that when you're at the end of the story with that beautiful ending, you're just like, this is what the wedgie community deserves, like, and we, it's hard to say we need more of that because it kind of stands alone, and like, you need the content that can be honored instead of just content that sort of honors it. But the fact we have this in the community is like a gift for all of us, I think.
yeah, absolutely. It, yeah, it's it is really well done. 'Cause it jumping ahead a bit, just for a second. It's great to that her character arc is resolved
Yes.
by her accepting her fetish. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's the
It's
thing. It's so key and so critical, and like you don't think about it, but like of all the people she's fighting, one of them is herself. And it's like the fact she's like
mm,
hiding who she is from Sylvia, and then she has to embrace it, and it's her superpower, right? In the end, like in a way, or obviously not literally, although you could say it's maybe wedgie fish's superpower, but she's able to withstand this like extremely powerful wedgie because of it, and she's able to use that, and it obviously recontextualizes like a lot of the story and what happens, and there's cool hints to it. But the fact she does get to like accept that, and she's like, there's like a pride and like a power that it gives her, is a beautiful message to kind of leave the readers with too, and to leave us with, because she could be like, and I'm gonna keep hiding it, and that's not as
mm,
triumphant, like an ending that's not as like victorious, instead of like coming out and accepting it and gonna, use it and embrace it. And like Sylvia knows, and it's kind of like there's like a deeper friendship there now because of that like
yeah,
truth being out. So all that very powerful, very meaningful stuff.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But we'll talk more about that later once we get to the end.
For sure.
I really love that just because Haley joined up with Michelle, she's not automatically shooting straight up to the top of the bullyarchy, as Magni called it. She
Yes.
still has to deal with all the legwork of actually establishing herself as a bully's bully. And it's fantastic that Magni shows this. Instead of doing some cop out like a time skip or training montage a la Rocky, I think the
Yeah.
fight with Luna is great for this, and the
Yes.
fact that Luna is able to deliver an atomic wedgie despite what Haley has gone through already is wonderful grounding to a character who could so easily balloon out of control into
Yep.
some Sosuke Aizen godlike figure.
Yeah, well said.
Uh,
It's true, yeah, you get to see her lose too, like, as much as she wins, and, like, she has really brutal fights. There's no, like, one punch man wedgies in this story except maybe Michelle, and even then, that kinda backfires on her. Yeah,
mm,
I think it's just super well handled, a lot of that action, a lot of the fights that we see. And it's the fact like he understands not to rush it. Like there's 5 chapters, as you said, they're very beefy, so there's time, and there's like chances for us to get to know Haley and to sort of understand like what these fights mean, and so they all feel significant. So her growth into like this powerhouse that we see later, means something, and it's not just like, oh, and now she's super powerful, and nothing
Yeah.
is a threat to her anymore, and it's like, well, now
Mhm.
I'm bored, like the interest is in seeing the challenges and seeing how she struggles, or overcomes the challenges, and like feels more real, and again, he manages that perfectly. It's such a great fighting martial arts type story for that arc, because it captures a lot of what you expect to see in the best possible ways. Like, it is this, you don't start out as the best fighter. You have to work for it. You have to train, and you have to prove yourself, and it's not
Mhm.
automatic. Even if she comes to it with experience, like, this is a new group of people, and we're not assuming that she's really good at fighting everybody she meets. And like, there's going to be people who beat her, not just because it's cool to see Luna, who like people really like winning a fight, but because it does something really good for like the character growth, and
Mhm.
like the show, when she does win, it's more significant, and it's like really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Jumping ahead to Golden View Park. I know slides are slippery, but you can pretty easily stand up on them if you're wearing shoes or not wearing socks and just bare feet because of traction. So
Yeah.
I don't know why Alyssa acts so helpless, like she's hanging off the side of a cliff.
Nerds, when it comes to fighting wedgies, are notoriously helpless. There's something about a wedgie that's just
It's like
overpowering.
kryptonite. It just
Exactly.
paralyzes them.
It just exactly, like, in true Superman fashion, like, when Kryptonite hits him, and he's just totally laid out. Like, and that's the
Yeah.
kind of Superman we like to see. Not like, oh, he's like, it's kind of a inconvenience. Like, in a lot of comics, Kryptonite gets near him, he's on the ground, absolutely useless until it's
Yep.
away from him. And like, you see that in the new Superman movie, which is good too. Like, when the weaknesses like matter, and it just sucks for
Yeah.
the nerds that the weaknesses are like that extreme that even the laws of gravity and like traction don't apply. But that's
Mhm.
so it is to be a nerd.
Yeah. Yep. Uh, very fun. The dark turn that Haley takes at the end of chapter 2 is very well earned. She's been
Mm,
dealing with bullying for a long time,
yep.
and even if she's resolved to change that and puts on a bold front, she's still struggled basically every step of the way, having
Yes, sir.
lost more fights than she's won, and any victories she's managed to pull off have been Pyrrhic in some way, whether it's her getting a brutal wedgie or someone around her getting a wedgie because she wasn't good enough to protect them.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, it's kind of wild how much she has to go through to like get the win. It
Consequences.
is. It is. It is. It really is. It's not just like, I'm such a great fighter, and it's no. It's like, when you win a fight, something happens, and when you lose a fight, something happens, and like, there's no like nothing. There's always a consequence in Haley the Bully, as you said. Like, there's nothing where a fight doesn't matter. Like, they all very significant. Everything that kind of happens, there's a great sort of like danger to it all. It feels like one way or the other.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's just great that that something is going to happen that Haley has to deal with
Yes.
instead of like a Jake and Gwen where, oh, Gwen can be given a fucking power wedgie off the side of a building
Yep.
and multiple people can start to take pictures and videos. Oh, but it's fine. Nothing's gonna
It's
happen because
fine.
of that.
Yeah.
We
Or,
know nothing's
you
gonna
know,
happen.
exactly. Or the consequences are like, you know, to this strange sort of like, eh, degree where they drive the story, but in even crazier ways. Where it's like, okay, now this character who's into them, this like teacher, is going to get involved because she like saw the pictures. I was like, is that really what would happen?
Yeah.
A natural
I mean
consequence? Like, is that's where we're going with it? But
I
you know, and that's with Haley the Bully, it's obviously more grounded. That's the thing. And when I always talk about consequences and say like, look at the lack of them, it's not just because like, oh man, we want to see people get in trouble or punished, but it's like, you want it to be meaningful, and that's what
This is what
comes
would
with like a
actually
deeper
happen.
story. Yeah, and like they don't all have to have that. Obviously, they don't all have to be
Right.
deep. Like, here's exactly the consequences that would happen. Obviously, they don't have to be all realistic.
No, but
But it's such a
it
great follow up, and it's something we've
yeah.
always been missing in stories.
Mm.
And when we talk
Yes.
about like all these stories being unfinished and stuff, it's like all you have to do, and I think that's what I sort of rail against, is think of like, well, what would happen next?
Yeah.
Potentially,
Yeah.
what would just happen next? And there's so many stories in those consequences. Like, well, now like Lucy and Daniela, like the bully, starts to change. Like, what happens? And the nerd gives a wedgie. What happens? And like, it just goes from there. And it's just like basically a study in like these consequences that do happen. Like, you decide to not be with the person who likes you, like in Lucy and Daniela for side characters, and like
Yeah.
that hurts them, and like that,
Mhm.
drives some of their actions, and like
It
yada
causes
yada
them to
yada.
be like they are throughout the story.
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
we don't get a lot of that, and again, it's like a lot of times it's not a knock on the writers. It's just like they
No,
set out. They're like, I
absolutely.
have a cool wedgie idea, and that's all it is. And then they get caught up in the attention that they hopefully get, and then it sort of ends up with just
Yeah.
like you know, and they run out of ideas. But maybe just the way to switch the thinking is to think like what would be a consequence of what
Yeah.
happened.
Absolutely.
Maybe
And
a tip for writers.
it just makes the story better. 'Cause
Mhm,
on some level,
mhm.
I feel some sort of
Yeah.
dissonance when there isn't some kind of consequence to what happens.
Yes.
That's just fundamental cause and effect.
Yeah.
Something will happen if you do something.
It's true. Yes.
So when nothing happens because something happened,
Yeah.
it's like, you're being told a joke, but you don't get the punchline.
It's true. It's very true, yeah. It does sort of, like, take away some of the significance of what you just read or saw when, next thing you know, it's like, "Oh, but that didn't really matter." Like,
Yeah.
it's just kinda, "Oh, that just happened," and, like, "Don't worry about it," kinda thing.
There there was no reason to get invested because everything was
Yeah.
going to work out just fine anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So Magni said in the description of chapter 2 that you helped with writing it. What do you remember from that?
I remember pretty well, surprisingly. He reached out and he wanted me to beta read it, and I've there's times where I would be very quick to beta read, but like sometimes I do it, and I would go so hard on some of these stories, like I would be so critical to the point where no one would ever ask me to read again. And I was like, "Hey,
Mm.
I gotta chill it on the beta reading, or just be kinder." Like I would never
Nah,
be mean about it, but I would always point out like lots of basically nitpicking, like I don't know about this, I don't know about
nothing
that,
wrong
and
with
like,
that.
and there was some like conventions of I think like internet writing that I was just like, it's like why would you do this and stuff, or why would you have this? I don't understand this, and like I was
I
bringing in some cases like an old world, like this is how books look like and how books would write stuff. And I think in some cases that was throwing people off. So when Magni reached out, I was a little like, oh man, like of course I'm honored. I'd been talking to him about Camp No Name, about that story, and like about Hailey the Bully, and praising it from like day one and stuff, and telling people about it from day one. And
mm,
so it was a huge honor. I remember reading through it. I didn't have like a ton of notes, but there were some points that I was like with the fights, I was add a little detail here and there, be a bit more, detail with some of the descriptions. I think he was some of his concerns were how do you balance some of these characters, because some of them in their, base stories are like very overpowered and things. And he was like, do I have to worry too much about that? And I was like, no, just including them. And you might get some people who are upset their character isn't like perfectly portrayed, but this story isn't just like about one character who's there. So I think that kind of reassured him, and I remember going through it and offering some thoughts and notes and things, and on the fights especially,
mm,
and I think some stuff. Uh, yeah, mostly the fights, some of the character stuff, just making sure it was always sort of like the wedgies were always kind of driving the plot forward, because I knew that was a priority for him. But it wasn't a lot that I had to say or do, because it came out very clean to start, and it was very minor stuff. So it made my life easy, and I think was just a nice like boost for him to know that like, someone thought he was on the right track already and was sort of along for the ride all the way. So it was
Mm,
a lot of fun. It was a big honor to get to do that and help him out with it.
that's awesome. I see no problem with being however you want to be when you're uh, editing, proofreading, looking it over, whatever. It, I think it's good to challenge the writer on what they've put down, so they can push back and help you understand why they put it, and then it
Hmm.
feels really good because you know there was a lot of intention behind it, or
Yes,
you help them realize, oh, well, you know what, this actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have here. Like
for sure.
done that many times with
Totally.
Vaughn for Anno Manhattan.
Nice.
Gotta gotta give them push always.
Yeah. No, totally. That's important. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think then it makes the story better.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So the chapter 2 references, are at least the characters are Hannah Henley by Wedgie Yeager V2, Elizabeth Nicholson by Yokai77, Natalie by J Shack, Ashley and Luna by Between Two Cheeks, Beth Hart by the Asdifgical 1234, Alex Hughes by Uber Bagel 101567, Carol Adams by Sleep Well Today, a humanized version of Wanda Rexer by Electronic Kangaroo, Heather Frost by Superguy 6060, Alyssa by Call Me Flame, Joshi Shimanzu by Chaos Recon, Scarlet Class by Starfish Art, and Haley's phone background referencing a story by Night Fury the Black. So yeah, that chapter 2 did not slow down on the references at all.
No. And it's nice to see most of the writers, and same in chapter one, and the artists and the members of the community, who, were around then are still around now. You can see some of the
Mm,
accounts are deleted going back through those old stories.
yes,
But in most cases they're still here, which is very nice.
absolutely. I really like how the victims of Haley's scheme gone awry react to her bullying. They don't know she was planning on taking down Michelle. All they've experienced from her is unwarranted wedgies, and so they want to fight back against her.
Yeah, it's true. And she is like this kind of like Star Wars rebel, which has come up in the community. That sort of like arc because of its omnipresence, in culture, and that's how the wedgie community often looks to culture for some of these things. Like we said, MagniPulls did it obviously, and with Marvel, but yeah, like that she's pretending to be evil but she doesn't really pretend that hard. Like she quite embraces with somewhat quickly uh the bully and being bad and like and hurting people for like the power, and she's seduced to the dark side basically. And I think one of the chapter titles is the dark side, right? So it's like not a secret what he was going for there.
Right.
But it is a really cool take on that and a well handled version of it where characters, don't know what's going on, so it's a nice device to make sure the fights don't stop. Where people just go, oh well, we know she's good, so let's work with her now, and we don't have to fight her. Like, no, the fights continue. The fights will keep continuing, and that's obviously what we want to see.
Well,
So
it's the
it's
thing, like
well handled.
yeah, the characters are showing a theory of mind. They don't
Yes.
know what because they weren't exposed. They didn't have access to the information that Haley's on the side of good. All they can
Yep.
see is yet another bully.
Yes.
It's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And Sylvia like knows, like she understands, like she's clearly like studied the power levels of some of these bullies. Like
Yeah.
she sort of understands like the dynamics better than Haley does in some ways. Because she's had to, I suppose, as like a nerd. And so she sort of like is warning her like against these things she's doing, and she sees her sort of turning to the dark side, and tries to like bring her back, and then obviously gets punished quite brutally for it.
Yes.
In a necessary kind of moment that it was difficult to read, but because it was so well done and powerful. But yeah, I mean, Sylvia sort of knows what's happening and the consequences, like is kind of powerless to stop it in some ways.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what nerds are. They're powerless against the
Powerless,
bullies.
as we say, as completely and utterly.
I think the nerds' reactions to Haley's bullying is a great parallel to the first time we see Haley take on multiple people. Those 2 might have been bullies, and these 4 are nerds, but she did do a pretty decent job overall of handling the bullies before being taken down. So the potential for her to be much better was there from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. There's some hints that like very quickly we realize like she's actually quite good at the wedgies. And that
Yeah,
might be because of her like secret,
or sh
possibly,
she was on the
or she
receiving end
did
of so many for so many
so
years.
many, yeah, which is always a good trope too.
Yeah.
And like we get the other one that you totally buy, which fits into the twist, and like but I'll mention it now since it's relevant. Is like when Sylvia finds her and says, "Are you giving yourself a wedgie?" She goes, "Oh, I'm doing it to build tolerance." And we readers, we completely buy that. There's no
I
question.
didn't.
We completely buy it, most of us, because we've read so many stories. We're like, that makes perfect sense to us. Like that's
It
always a trope that we're so familiar with. We don't even question. We go, of course, that's just what people do, because that's always been done, and it's just like that makes sense. There's other hints before that, and it's like a weirdly set up scene that does ring alarm bells. But when
yeah,
you think about that part just alone on its own, you're like, I can buy that because that's a familiar trope in the community.
on
So
its
like
own, yes.
exactly on its own for sure. You don't question it. And we're
But wait,
so but there's other hints before that that are like really sus. That
I
like but that one's like a really sus one. Like that one's so out of nowhere that's like really almost giving away the twist, like the most obvious example. There's more subtle ones I really like more. But that one, you could see that and you can maybe crack the case right there. But when you read that, you're like, that's such a trope. That's so common. Nerds are like, hey, we have to train. You have to give me wedgies. Like, and build a tolerance. And like,
it's
we've
in
seen that.
it's at the end of Saseda's novel, I Could Change Her. But,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
when I
Yeah.
was going through before I got to the end and found out what was actually going on,
Yeah.
I it immediately set off alarm bells in my head. I was thinking, if Haley used to be relentlessly bullied at her old school, why
Yes.
does she need to practice giving herself wedgies to get
Yes.
used to the feeling?
She should
She
have a
only got a
tolerance,
3
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she only got a
That's it.
3-month break from getting the
That's
wedgies,
it.
and then as soon as she starts
Exactly.
Calypso Academy, she's immediately receiving them again. It didn't make any sense to me.
Exactly. That's the
She
thing. So
she should
there's
already
hints like
have
that.
that.
She should, for sure. So that's like one of the most obvious hints. There's better, more subtle ones, but that one, it was like he was giving away the store with that one a little bit.
Yeah. On the other hand, I do wish there was a little more time before Haley's complete fall to being a bully. What's
Yes.
there is really well written, but
Yep.
it does feel a little fast for how
Hmm.
all in Haley gets.
Yep. It's true.
And I think that's a product of it. Despite the chapters being very dense and there have being a lot in them, there are only 5.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I never like count how many words or anything it is, but certainly like based on like the runtime of it, it's tough to like. It would be cool to see a lot more, but I
Mhm.
think just the nature how long the story really is, and it basically is like all these series of conflicts. There's definitely quieter moments, but the amount of sort of like quieter action where characters are just sitting around talking is like very minor, and like that's maybe you could argue you maybe need a little bit more of that to sort of see
Yeah.
her like convincing herself to do this, and like or if maybe if you wanted to keep it with the fights, a couple more wedgie scenes that like see her getting pushed there a bit more and like a few more, I don't think you need a whole other beefy chapter, but certainly maybe a few more scenes to kind of like
I
see
think
that
another
arc, because it's
chapter.
always tough like when a character changes like that and goes to the dark side. It's almost always going to be a case of like, I want to see a little bit more, like I need to really be sold on this, and that's tough if you don't have like a lot of time to do it.
That's the thing with writing. You have as much time
Yes,
as you want.
yes, it's true,
I don't
it's true,
that no,
it's true.
especially as a hobbyist writer in the wedgie
Yeah,
community, there is absolutely no pressure, no time limit, no crunch, no boss
yes.
breathing down your neck. You have all the time in the world.
For
You
sure, for
to do
sure. When
whatever
I
you
say
want.
time, I mean literally the amount of time his story takes and, like, the
Yeah.
amount of time he spends on it in that case. It's like that's a limited period that he gives us
Yes.
and that
Yes.
the story takes place in. If he had written more, certainly, like, we would have gotten that, but because of where it goes and, like I said, the runtime of it, to speak in sort of like movie terms,
Yeah.
we get what I think, yeah, I think fair to say, like, definitely could have done some more with that for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. And not I don't like, maybe just 1 chapter
Yeah,
extra.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah, for sure. Definitely. Then it would be a lot more time to see that fall. You would get more time
Mm.
with probably other characters, the list goes on.
Yeah. It makes me think of, like, the end like, the last couple volumes of Bleach. If Kubo had maybe a year more to get like, another 50 chapters
Yeah,
into Thousand Year Blood War arc, so much of the rushed nature of it would have been taken care of.
sure.
Just
No,
but
totally. Yep.
there, it actually kinda makes sense because 'cause he's got the publisher constantly breathing down his neck, trying
Yeah.
to get and you're on a time crunch and schedule every single week.
Yes.
Gotta get
Yeah.
something out.
Art's always going to be at war with commercial demands, and even
Yeah.
like you said, in the case of a hobbyist writer who's doing it just for fun and for passion, you still got to work, you still got to eat, at a
Yes,
certain point
absolutely.
you go like, you're happy with the story, and you think like this is enough of an earned arc and stuff, and then readers
Yes.
going back will say, you know what, I would have liked a bit more, and at the end of the day, it's almost impossible. Like I said, like you can spend more time, but there's even then, we get another chapter. There'll be some of us saying, you know what, even a little bit more would have been better. Like I'm buying it more for sure, no argument there. But
Yeah.
what about if we saw more?
Where
like there's gonna be some like that. So a certain
Yeah.
like I think in this case we agree that like yeah like yeah you could slow it down a little bit. The story's very fast paced, very action heavy. You could maybe benefit from like maybe like one or two introspective kind of moments where things are slowed down a little bit. I think that's fine, but certainly yeah, like you can also look at it and say like there's gonna be a point where you just gotta say like the arc is the arc, and like hopefully you buy it. Hopefully I've done enough as a writer for you to like buy
Absolutely.
what I'm going for.
Yeah. I mean, who's to say that given another chapter, there's not something in that new chapter that's like, "Oh, couldn't we have some more of
Yes,
that?" We're not even
exactly.
just, "Can we have
You're
some
right.
more of the same thing we
Yeah.
already wanted more of, but
Yes.
something
Beautiful.
else?" Like,
Totally.
yeah.
Absolutely. Like,
And
oh, they had this character that they showed, and like, oh, I wish now we had more of that character, and like,
it is kind
it
of
goes
funny that we're
on and
saying that
on.
because
Yeah.
I do feel that
Yeah.
way about something in chapter 5 that I'll talk about later.
Nice.
But,
Nice.
I don't remember exactly when I heard this saying, but I thought it was really good. It goes something like, "What's like not it's not exact it's not quite like this, but basically, what's the point in putting there's not much sense in putting 50% more effort into something just to fix 5% of the things you see. If you're only gonna have a very slightly better if you're gonna put so much extra work into it, if you're
Yes.
only gonna have a slightly better end result."
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something to that for sure. Like, obviously as writers we understand that, like, if that, what seems like a small result, or even if it literally is a small result of, like, you make one little change, like, that could have a significant impact, and but in the story, depending what it is, obviously, but certainly, yeah, like, if we're talking about that in the context of, like, why put in a ton of work for something that's, only going to bother maybe 1% of readers.
Yeah.
Like, if you write something that you feel is perfect, that a lot of people say is great, but one reader reads it, beta reader, or even later you publish it and someone says, and even if it's not like a very critical thing, but it's just like, oh, I wish you did more with this one super minor character who wasn't important to the story at all, and like, why,
Mhm.
I wish you'd done that. And it's like, that's good, like, cool, that's valuable, but also just like, you can't write like that trying to think of like, what is every single thing I could do, because then you'll never finish your story
Yeah.
also. But then also, like, yeah, that's some of the beauty of like reading and writing, that there's gonna be elements like that that are kind of missed. So it's
Yeah.
tempting to like think like that maybe, and think like, I'm gonna solve all my problems, I'm gonna put so much work into this, everything's gonna be perfect. At the end of the day, there's still gonna be that one reader say, but that one little thing in chapter 904 where like that one character said the one thing, I wish you did more with that. And it's just like, what? After 8 years of work and after a million things, and I did all this stuff and everything's
Yeah.
perfect, like, you
Yeah.
know.
That's it.
So again,
Bleach is a perfect example of that.
exactly.
686, technically 87
Yes.
chapters, and there's
Yes.
still so much that I wanna see from it. Cause
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
but,
Yep.
I there's beauty in imperfection.
Yes, there
If
is. Yeah.
if Hailey the Bully was as perfect, everything we got everything we wanted, nothing was left out, nothing was
Yeah.
off the table, everything was taken care of perfectly, exactly as it should have been, it would feel hollow.
It would. Yeah.
It would
When
not feel like there was any humanity in it.
exactly. Yeah, that's true. No argument here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, on some level, I am happy that it is not I don't get as much as I want.
Yeah, for sure. It lets us imagine more, like, and that's what I've always said. And like,
Yes.
you have to leave something to the readers. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's unintentional, or sometimes it's the product of very good writing and editing, where, things are left open to
Yeah.
interpretation, and for them to add something, to think of, something. And that's how, things like fanfics and like, passion and fandom is born, because it's like inviting
Absolutely.
people into the story in a way where, if you're like, no, I've answered every question, there's nothing unexplained, it's just like, oh well, okay, that's fine, but I'm all right, I'll move on to the next story then. It doesn't
There's
hold
nothing
my
to bite
attention.
into.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Didn't we
Ex
talk about this on a previous like,
I think so.
leaving space for I think it was something else, leaving space for the weird or something like that, I don't remember.
Yeah, that sounds like a very good insight for sure.
I don't remember. I said we said something like that before, but
Yeah.
anyway, uh, the references that Magni used for chapter 3 are Jenna by Cheeky Pull, Robin by Purple Frock Coat, Crystal Harp by B. Kelly Chaos Army, Tiffany Lennox by Elephant Eddie, Pauline by Jesse 4, Lexi by Lexi and Brooke, Tanaka Mihama Rose by James Mizuhara, a humanized version of Ellie by Reptile 111, Ashley Becker by Evil Goodness 420, Amber Mukasaki by Backup Account 25, Alexis by Alexis Faustus, and Yuki Schofield by Pichu the Panther. Still not slowing down at all on the references to
No.
chapter 3.
Yeah, it's true.
Once I got to chapter 4, I became pretty aware of how the story basically lost its sense of time and progression, or at the least forgot to convey to the reader how much time passes between each major event.
Mhm.
Haley might have changed into a bully, but how long did that take? How much time has passed in general between the major scenes and events?
Yeah.
Chapter 5 does say it had been a few weeks overall, so we can assume at most a month has passed during the entirety of the story.
Yeah.
But the more minute to minute progression seems to be lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. for sure. And that's like, I think, because again, I think the runtime and yada yada yada. And it's in a lot of ways, it's not always a concern of most wedgie
Mm,
fetish writers, but it's cool to see like it's one setting story. Things seem to happen relatively quickly, and concern mostly the same events, which is all good. But yeah, like and in a way, like, does it affect us to not know how much time? In some cases, like, it's probably fine. We can get away with not knowing, like, how
yeah.
exactly long. And I mean, in that way, it's a nice shortcut to say, like, she's still been fighting and things have been happening, and, like,
Yeah.
it
It's
kind of
just a little
works in
easier to
that way.
file in your mind as keeping
Absolutely.
a
You're
track
right.
when
You're right.
events happened
For sure.
in
Yeah.
relation to each other.
Totally. Yeah. No, you certainly lose a little bit of that at a
Yeah.
certain point where you're just like, I think this is all like happened soon and relatively close together, but yeah, like not having the clearest picture is like, wait, it's does this still matter as much if it's been a while? Is she still thinking of this? And so there's questions like that that do arise, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I knew Haley would eventually give Sylvia a wedgie. Saw it coming. I knew it was
Yep.
gonna happen.
Yep. It
And the
had to.
execution is
Yeah.
fantastic.
It is. It's really
Oh,
good. Yeah.
it's such a good I think it might be my favorite wedgie in the story.
Probably, yeah. I think it might be for what it like signifies, and the fact that
Yeah.
like this like ripping wedgie and obviously something's breaking, so like
Mhm.
there's like a very like literal cool like theme that's tapped into there, which was very
Yes.
important.
Yeah, the indirect details filling multiple roles, and I love when it does that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That is intelligent writing.
For sure it is, yeah. And the story and Magni is nothing if not intelligent.
Yeah.
Obviously, and like the fact he's gotten, like if like I said, he's said in some instances that like some of these details that he's creating and writing were planned from like day one. And like you see some of that play out in the fact that he does have this large connected universe of characters and stories throughout, and then also just like in Hailey the Bully, where like it's clever stuff, like the type of wedgies characters are getting and what it sort of means, and the roles it all plays is like very well thought out in a lot of cases.
Mm,
And again, like the wedgies growing as the story goes, like the intensity of them, and obviously we get with this like perfect wedgie right at the end. It's it feels like a really well handled approach to wedgies throughout.
yeah, 100%. Maggie says in the description of chapter 4 that this was the shortest chapter overall, and it definitely felt like it. Even just the fact that I barely had anything to say about it. It ends with yet another blow to Haley, and I really
Mhm.
love how nothing Haley has done so far has been right as soon as she decided to become the
Yeah.
top bully.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, consequences, as you said, always comes
Yes.
back to that, right?
Mhm.
Which is
Just
very powerful stuff.
it's it kind it feels maybe like Haley the bully stole the indirect the wow, it just completely flew out of my head. What is the phrase? Oh, the consequences. Why I completely forgot that word for a
Oh,
second. I
okay.
don't know
Yeah, yeah,
why.
yeah, yeah. No.
Um, it feels like Haley the bully went around and stole all the consequences from every other story, and that's why so many other stories don't have them, and this story has so many.
Beautiful. Yes, I love it. That's definitely it. 100%.
Yeah. So the chapter 4 references are Charity Koi by Great Ape, Sora Kinakachi by Adrian Dr. C 2002 Red, Ariel Brown and Abigail Wright by Jackery Jack, and Erica by Ryakun. So many less references in this chapter.
Yeah,
A lot
certainly
less.
smaller, like you said, and but it's cool to hear some familiar names there with really cool characters
100%.
you wouldn't expect there, like Jack's character. She's like a paranormal investigator in
Mhm.
Wedgie stories, and obviously they're not doing like paranormal investigations in the story, but it's just really cool to sort of see characters you might not expect, and It's such a tough thing to, like, pull off the amount of work he must have done, like, to,
Yeah.
research some of these, get permission, like, to use the characters in some cases, like, it's an
Mhm.
immense, immense effort that's, never really been replicated on that level in any way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. At first, I was wondering why Magni opened chapter 5 with a tiny flashback to Haley's past. And then I've realized it was that Haley finally remembered who she was after so
Mhm.
long of being tormented and then clawing her way to the quote unquote top of Calypso Academy.
It's like the final hint before the reveal too of, like, who she
Yeah.
is. That, like, and the thing with Haley Bully we have to acknowledge is the sort of problematic fact and the
Uh,
not good fact, to put it bluntly, because it's not good that there are these underage references.
yeah.
It is not good, and it is a takeaway from what is otherwise like a fantastic story. And obviously, people
Mhm.
know MagniPulls is, I won't say notorious, I might be overstating it, but he has a history of this, and it's not malignant.
Right.
But obviously Zoe from Fuchsia Freaks is a young kid.
Mm.
And he has
Mhm.
said, after people pointed out to him and things, that, like, it was not his intention, obviously, to sexualize kids, but, it doesn't matter. That's, as I've always said, if you have
Right.
an underage character in your story, it doesn't matter. There's wedgies involved, there's
Yeah.
kids. Don't
Yep.
do it.
Yep.
So unfortunately, you have to mention, that the story has that. It's a blow to otherwise an awesome story. There's no getting
100%.
away from that.
It always creeps into the best stories.
It does, yeah,
Ugh.
unfortunately. Unfortunately, so many of our stories do,
Yeah. It
as
does
you
everything
as
it
e
does everything but outright state Haley as a child, which is, never
yeah,
never gonna let erotica.
exactly, yeah, like, and there's a few, like, the fact she has a younger sister, and it's unclear
Yeah.
how old Haley is, and then, like we get Michelle, references to when she's younger, which I think we can is a bit, not great, but it's then we get this flashback where she's clearly a kid, and it's like, that's
Yeah.
not good. And,
Mhm.
like, it's a problem where, in the community where, like, we understand as writers, like, you might wanna tell a flashback. The
Yeah.
problem is, I think, we just can't,
Yeah.
unless you do it
Yeah.
super vaguely, you just
W
can't,
w
unfortunately. And in a way, it's unfortunate because, like, again, from a creative, you want to be able to tell stories. In a way, it's not, because we cannot have any kids in the
Yeah,
stories,
that's
period.
like when if you want to tell a real full story, that is the like, well, you're gonna run into that because
Yes.
characters obviously had
Yes.
childhoods and they existed in the past, but
Yes. But we can't show that.
you
You can't mention
exactly.
it.
It you like, it's you don't want to close the door fully on that because
Yep.
it's an avenue of storytelling that in any other way would be very valid and make complete sense,
Yes.
but yeah, I think you're
Not
right.
here.
I think you just have to bring the hammer that you
You
just
can't.
can't
You
do it. It
just can't, yeah.
just can't do
You
it
just can't do it.
regardless. Does
That's
not
the thing.
matter.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I feel like I may have used this comparison before, but should remember the name of the movie before I reference it. But there's an old
Mm,
movie that's a noir and it's otherwise very good, but there's like blackface in it. And at the time
mm,
it was probably fine, but you can't look at that movie without saying to anyone you're talking to about it, or any criticism like this that we're doing. And criticism, I mean, obviously in the broad term of talking about it from like a sort of critical analysis perspective, without
yeah.
saying like that is not okay.
Right.
Period.
I
That's
would
the
say
same thing we're doing
there
here.
is a bit of a difference because that was made at a time when blackface
Yeah.
was
Yes.
acceptable versus underage
It's never
characters
been
and
acceptable. Yeah.
never been acceptable.
It's not
Exactly.
good that it happened to blackface,
Of
like,
course not. It was
obviously, and
never
that's the
morally,
sort
it
of
was
thing we're
never
getting at.
actually right, but
Yes.
at the time,
And
it
you gotta
was socially acceptable, so you
yeah,
kinda
people
have
did it.
it's
Yeah.
of the time. If it was done today,
Yeah.
shut that person down, but you kinda like that's how it was, so you can't really
Yes.
hold the people of that time to today's standards because they didn't live today.
Yeah. So I took us off topic with that, but we can't unfortunately talk about Haley the Bully without flagging that unfortunate
100%. Always
unfortunate
have to.
aspect that does creep in and that does make it problematic and like it goes on and on and on.
Yes, absolutely. But on a maybe a slightly more positive note, I do love that Magni uses the classic Fairly Odd Parents episode as the
Yeah,
inception to her interest in wedgies,
yeah.
and I for I'll get into what it means later once we get to the end of the story, which we're not too far off of, but, for now, I'll just say that that reveal does seem like a bit of a stretch to me. But we'll
Good
get
point.
we'll get into that in a little bit. What I'm wondering now, though, is how exactly someone wrote "Wedgie Time" on Haley's desk while she was sitting there without her noticing. There's no way she didn't see the top of her desk when she walked into the classroom, and a phrase like that would have absolutely caught her attention since
Totally.
her life seems to have revolved entirely around wedgies as we learn throughout the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. Maybe it's more of the magic. Maybe
Yeah,
that's the
that's
answer to
true,
any
that's true.
unexplained question. Because we don't see it here much except for the reference to magic, like you said,
Yeah,
and the things like that that may be unexplained. So perhaps
yeah,
that's the secret.
yeah. The scene with Haley helping Taylor with Sandra is another great one. Throughout the entire story, wedgies have been nothing but trouble and have been used to hurt and embarrass others. But here, Haley uses wedgies to resolve a conflict, showing that wedgies are simply a tool, and it comes down to the person dishing them out as to whether they're positive or negative.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Reframing the central plot device is can be difficult to do, but if it's pulled off properly, damn, it is. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's such like we said, it's very intelligently written
Yes.
story. As you said, there's things you know are coming. Like Sylvia's gonna have to get a wedgie. Haley's gonna have to go to the dark side and come back
Mhm.
from the dark side. Like that all feels inevitable.
Mhm.
It's not like she's permanently evil and she's now replacing Michelle. Whatever, whatever. Like we don't expect that and we don't see it. Um, but yeah, the fact that we get subtle hints about the broader theme, like you said, where like wedgies are good, and we obviously he outright says that and has like the Daniela exchange that makes that very apparent. But there's like subtle hints to it more broadly throughout. And it's like, and that's something, she has to come to understand. And that's a core part of the story is her like recognizing that like this thing that she likes, as we learn, doesn't have to be bad and evil as it's been, like she's just gotten them. And even when she's like training herself, quote unquote, spoiler alert, she's not really like
Mm,
it's part of like a process to like train and like get better with wedgies and not just for pleasure or not
right.
just for its own purpose. But by the end, when like Sylvia gives her one for fun, she's like embraced that and she can like accept it and she can like take a wedgie from a friend, which is something you
Mhm.
don't really think would make any sense in the beginning of the story when it's clearly like this tool of like evil.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you had the cliche of somebody getting so many wedgies that they just become good at it, but realistically, to actually become good at it, you're not just gonna magically get better by taking a bunch of you have to actually practice on how to do it, so yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
you'll like this thought quite a bit, I think. I'm kind of offended at how small a cameo Daniela got. She's such an incredibly well-realized character, and I would have loved to see more of her at Calypso Academy. Honestly, when I really think about it, I think she is my all-time favorite character in the community.
Hey, thank you, my
Of
friend. That's
course,
too
it
kind.
doesn't really make sense for her to be at the academy unless the school you set Lucy and Daniela in is Calypso Academy. She
It's not
100% would have been a top bully, though
for
she
sure.
definitely wouldn't have worked with anyone else. So I'm
Yeah,
glad Magni didn't haphazardly throw her into Michelle's gang or something like
yeah.
that.
Maybe she's on a field trip or something.
To another
And then
school?
yeah, oh, totally. Like, school like clubs, like sports teams. They play at
Oh,
other
okay.
schools. You know
Oh,
what I
what
mean? Like, she
What
could be
what
playing
what's
on
what
sports or
extracurricular team would she be part of? Cheerleading,
maybe she
maybe?
joined yeah,
Okay, I could see this be
cheerleading
as a
or
cheerleading thing. Okay,
maybe
maybe,
she
okay.
joined a very nerdy group like W5H,
I
like,
don't
I don't know if you
know,
have
'cause
that
I'm
in America, but she
it
might have
because
done that.
it's even stranger to me that she's wearing a Spider-Man top. By the
Yeah,
time Daniela finally
yeah,
accepts that she loves Spider-Man, she stopped being a bully and giving
yeah.
wedgies.
Yeah. He does
So,
right around that where he's like, "It's fun. Old habits die hard," which was a very fun little exchange.
yeah, I mean, did she come to Calypso Academy as an adult after realizing that she really
Imagine
did
that.
enjoy giving
He's like
wedgies?
40 years old or something in that scene, and it's just not clear or something. Like, that's the Lucy and Daniela
Yeah,
sequel.
like, with, like, the Dazed and Confused, Matt,
Matt
uh,
McConaughey.
McConaughey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You keep getting younger. I stay the same age. Yeah.
No,
Perfect.
no, 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 no. I keep getting older and they stay the same age.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Alright, alright,
yeah,
alright.
yeah. Be cool if you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Haley does ask her about this, but it does seem very out of character for her to do that. Or at the very least, it kind of ruins the character arc she goes through for me. At least it's with a willing participant, but that's kind of the whole point of her character arc in Lucy and Daniela is not getting any
Yeah.
more wedgies.
It's true, yeah. It is, like it was such an honor to the character and to me to see her there, like, to be
Yes,
listed among all the references. Like, you could certainly nitpick it. It's one of these scenes where, like,
I
obviously,
know.
like, Joshi doesn't have, like, superpowers in her appearance, and, like, some of these
Yeah.
characters who again, the balance of them, like, they're gonna be off and stuff, and, like
I mean,
but
you could
yeah,
think of it
totally
as
the
like
thing with that scene is, like, yeah, like, very clearly, like, the theme is being told to you. And
yeah.
whereas other times it is way more subtle in the story,
Uh-huh.
right? Like, you probably could maybe play the scene a bit differently, but it's nice that, like, it really because you say it's like it feels like a child of Lucy and Daniela, and you get that connection very clearly where, like,
Mm,
Daniela, who's gone through this arc, is passing on her wisdom that she's learned to, like, the next generation of
mm,
bullies and stuff who are going through, like, a very similar arc. So in that way, it's like a theme of, like, the community building on what's come before, and that's what he's very much doing in Haley the Bully, like the themes, the tropes, the trends, the characters, all stuff we've seen that he's playing on in sometimes different ways, sometimes clear like homages to what's before it. And it really is just like this generation of stuff that came and honoring it all and showing it for like today's like writers and bullies and nerds and characters and really representing that in like a different way, I think. So I
mhm.
think in that way the scene sort of works on a few levels, but 100% you can look at it and say Daniela would do that. If she was
Yeah,
really evil, she would just wipe the floor with her. And
yeah.
so we
I
get
mean
that fun little line where she's like, "Thanks for not kicking my ass," which is
yeah.
hilarious.
I mean, yeah, that any other all of the other references and characters, it's like,
Yeah,
that's whatever, Magni can do
yeah,
whatever, but
yeah.
Daniela, I just feel
Not my
so
Daniela. Yeah,
strong, like, because, like,
that's
this
fine.
Lucy and
Yeah,
Daniela is
yeah,
so close is such a
yeah.
but it's
I
my favorite
appreciate
story,
that.
so
I appreciate
I
that.
hold it very close to my
That
heart,
means so
so
much to me, yeah, I appreciate it.
I
Awesome.
want people if they're gonna use Daniela, the characters from
Yeah.
that, I want them to get it right, especially
Amazing,
Daniela. And
amazing.
I mean, I think there's a bit of a missed opportunity there because the person that Danielle's giving a wedgie to is a willing participant, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, I think that person should have been Tracy.
Oh, damn, yeah, she'd have
Would
been
have made
so down
complete
for it.
sense.
She'd have been so down for it.
Yeah,
She'd have been yeah, it would have been a problem how down for it she
because
was.
then I could have created some kind of headcanon is like Tracy convinced Daniela to do it to her. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like
100%,
I could imagine
100%.
her being like, "Yeah, I know you're done with giving wedgies to everybody, but I
Yeah,
really like it
I
and
really
I
like
want
yeah,
you to do it
yeah,
to me, to not to anybody else, but because I want you to do it,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
okay."
For sure, and
Then
I
it would
think
make
I
sense
think
to
he's
me.
maybe going for that with the character she is given to, like, I think that's what's implied, that they have a fetish and are into it, but it's not entirely clear to me.
I Beyond that, though, Magni went to a ton of effort to make sure the characters he pulled from other writers weren't just in the story, but that they were true to the characterization already given to
Yeah,
them,
for
and it's very
sure.
impressive.
It is,
It
yeah.
reminds me of how Pony Pony X9 or 48 Carat was able to do that when he ran his arena game back in 2015 on Lucky
Mhm.
Fetish, which Hans and I have done an episode on way back, and you should check it out.
Yep. Definitely
This
check it
this
out.
was a lot more than that because the arena game barely went anywhere, but,
Yes.
this is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
My inner English teacher screamed at me about the potential symbolism involved with Haley finally ducking out of her leather jacket. I'm 99% sure I'm reading too deeply into it, but to me, that comes across as Haley finally letting down her inner walls and bearing her true
Mhm.
self to the world for the first time.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think you're right. I think spot on. There is stuff like that that says very literal. Like her name is strong. Like it literally
Mhm,
starting from that point, you can't read too much into it of like the things she does, how she acts. It's like, is she going to be strong or is she going to be kind and empathetic? Like these things don't have to be mutually exclusive in the story. They kind of present it as are, but also not. Where when she stands up to Michelle, there's like an inner strength that she has, and it's not just like outwardly. She doesn't beat her with a wedgie. Like you have to keep that in mind. Like she doesn't win
mhm,
the fight by giving her like a wedgie. She wins because of who she is
mm,
and like accepting that. Like which is
yeah,
kind of wild after all these fights, she wins
mhm,
by giving better wedgies or enduring and like, that's not how she wins in the end. So
yeah,
it's like very
yeah,
significant. So it's the same thing, like you said, the earbuds putting them in. She's arming herself for battle,
mm,
taking off the jacket. It's taking off her armor.
yeah,
She isn't
I
giving up the fight entirely, and that's clear. But there's like some of that where she's not the same person she was at the beginning, to put it
yeah,
simply.
it's the I mean, the putting in the earbuds, each time she did that, I was basically exactly picturing a Mortal Kombat scene
Yep.
where, like, you know how it in modern Mortal Kombat games, I guess really fighting games in general, it'll, like, transition from the cutscene to the gameplay by
Yep.
just, like, swooping the camera out to a side view. That's
Yes.
like her putting in the earbuds is like the camera swooping around to me.
100%.
And it's
100.
kinda funny that you keep bringing up, like, the meaning of her last name. I just looked up what her first name means, and in Norse, it means heroine. Like,
Hey, there you
actual, like,
go.
straight up hero.
There you go. See?
Yeah,
See? There's a
yeah,
very
yeah,
literal stuff he was
100%.
going for. Yeah, and like it's obviously Sylvia last name, same thing. Foster, she's supporting, she's helping her. Like, there's no like attempt to like hide some of that in these cases. Like, if you're
Yeah.
looking for him, if you're thinking about it, he's like doing these things that are like very literal and stuff. And
Uh-huh.
it works. Like in a story, it works because it's like something cartoony and fun, and just kind of like somehow he all manages to pull it all off really creatively and
Mhm.
fun.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that the story has been building up to from the very beginning, the
Yes,
perfect wedgie.
literally.
While it is I'm talking about the perfect wedgie.
Yeah.
While it is nice to see the perfect wedgie happen in its entirety after the buildup it receives, it feels kind of anticlimactic when Haley is just able to get up from it with a little
Yeah.
willpower. In fact, the name doesn't even fit to me. The
Yeah.
perfect wedgie, in my eyes, is one that completely humiliates the victim, but more importantly, allows for more wedgies in the future, and
Mhm.
one that essentially boils down to a particularly brutal, ripping wedgie just doesn't fit the book in my eyes. We
Mhm.
already have a perfect wedgie, and it goes by the name of Atomic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's and like we see Michelle like we learn, I guess, maybe a little retconny, but that she's been like trying to perfect this like at the camp, and
Yeah.
later on it's a thing where i- like she's trying to perfect it even more, and that in the when magic becomes more a thing.
Mm.
Spoiler alert for later chapters. Basically, this like witch character who's super powerful is like, there's no such thing as like a perfect wedgie or something because I can give magic and these wedgies are gonna be way better or whatever. Like, and it's like, and it sort of shuts down the whole perfect wedgie thing. And Michelle's kind of like broken because of that. She's like, all this
So that
work I did, all this work, and it's like so much time dedicated to this, and it's kind of meaningless
doesn't
because
mean
this
anything.
magic character
Wow.
can like do it and stuff. So that's something to think about. That like the perfect wedgie also
I
fits
mean,
into this broader story arc and stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to look at it. Like for Michelle, she thinks it's perfection. She views it as a culmination of so much stuff that happened. And like when you think about it like that, it's like Hailey, obviously her arc is the culmination of so much stuff, and
yeah.
Michelle is the culmination of all these things that happen to her and her choices, and like so like in a way like that sense of perfection is like we can get behind. But then yeah, when you think about like I think certainly for me, it really is just like that she is able to shrug it off. And like
Mhm.
it's a very anime thing, and the story has these kind of like anime fights where it's
Yeah,
just like I use my full power on you, and you're like,
yeah,
and it's not One Punch Man so much where it's like it's meaningless, but it's almost to that point where you're
yeah.
just like you unleash your full power on me, and I'm fine. And it's like
Yeah,
what
you may have
what?
broken all of my legs and
Yeah,
arms, but
I can
my
still
friends,
invincible, you know?
I still have to protect my friends, so
Yes,
I'm going to
therefore
survive anyway.
the power of friendship and love and goodness, allows me to overcome your most powerful attack that you've trained for years to
Yes,
do or whatever.
and
So
I
like
have
that's
to
always
win.
gonna be unsatisfying. It's like always
Yeah, of
in
course.
any sort of story context. And it's somewhat of
Yeah.
a necessity when you write up like I'm gonna do this super powerful attack. The character is unable to defend against it. It's like, well, that's the end, right? They're defeated. The end. But like, no, so he comes
Uh,
back with it.
I think some story, just one story should end like that,
I think so, yeah.
honestly.
I think so, for sure. You need
I
to
mean,
have that,
I
yeah.
guess you could write, like, a good ending, but just make that the alternative. Make that the
Yes,
alternate ending that's not
100%.
canon.
Yeah, yeah. And we get, like, an evil, villain version of Haley in, like, a one-off story, where like, what happens if she went to Camp Noname, and in that story,
Hmm.
she's very evil, and she's, like, basically picks on, like, some of the main characters from that story, and just, like, a brutal,
Oh,
dark wedgie scene and stuff.
yeah.
And so, like, we get, like, some of that in a feel for what that would kinda look like. But yeah, like, obviously, whenever you have the, "I'm gonna do my super powerful attack," and it doesn't matter, it's always a letdown,
Yeah,
for
I mean,
sure, like
it wouldn't but I be it I guess if it had more of an effect on her, then it
yeah,
would be alright, but it's
yeah, they coulda
it's
done,
I guess
like, Michelle monologuing for longer and, like, "I finally defeated you," and, like, done this attack, and Haley's on the ground for longer, or Haley's more beat up than she is, like, you could do any of
or, like
that for sure.
or her ass is actually torn up, like, she's bleeding actually or something
Damn, that would be
like 'cause
crazy, yeah.
at least that 'cause at least that it would be a little more if I guess it would feel more tangible, but, I get it probably feel even a little better if it wasn't just a really hard ripping wedgie.
Sure, sure. Yep. Yeah,
I
that's
don't
the thing,
some
because it's not like he came up with some brand new type of wedgie that was just
that's
so
what I was thinking it
insane
would
and
be.
different. And there's only so many really extreme ones. Like, do you hang her
Right.
up? Like, is that perfect? You get it over her head in a really good atomic. Like, would that classify? Like, if she's trying to design something new, like,
You know
and it's like you said, like maybe you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but Michelle was very much looking to do that, and
Yes.
you can argue she doesn't,
You
she
know what?
doesn't, you know.
I think if Magni really wanted to go with the magic being like, having a very background effect,
Yeah.
he could have had the perfect wedgie be something where you're able to pull the underwear in just the right way, just hard
Yeah.
enough where it fuses with your ass or something like that, so you always feel like you
Yeah.
have a ridiculous wedgie
Damn,
going on.
I love it. Yeah, sounds awesome.
That
That's
sounds more
very
perfect than just
yeah.
what she does.
Yeah, 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 that's very, high velocity, which I like. That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Uh, yeah. And, I mean, since Haley was able to survive the so-called perfect wedgie, I'm confused on why that automatically means Michelle is done for good. The only
She
per
uses up
the
all her energy, that's the thing. We makes
yeah,
that
but, like
very clear. He takes literally all of her energy to give a
oh,
wedgie
yeah,
that
okay, but
good.
I mean, in the moment, sure, but how long would it take her to just catch her breath or something? 'Cause the way he writes it is like Michelle is like she is done for like her reign of
Yes.
terror is over. Not just she's spent all her energy. Her
Yeah.
reign of terror is
It's
over. She's no
literally
longer queen of the
that's
school.
yeah,
Like
it's
the
that
only
powerful a witch.
the only people who saw the confrontation are Haley, Sylvia, and Michelle.
Yeah.
Haley had a very fearsome reputation, which has
Yeah.
started to fall off once she stopped running with Michelle's gang.
Yep.
Sylvia is considered an uber nerd in the court of
Yeah.
public opinion, and Michelle is the top bully in the school.
Yep.
Whose word would people realistically believe if all three told the story of what happened in the library?
Yep. Exactly. No, I mean for sure. And like, she uppercuts her, takes her out, but like, in a way is like, does that change much of anything?
Yeah,
Not really. We don't get the sense it does. Like it's a cool moment, but presumably the next day, Michelle could be back to fighting her with her group of bullies. You know,
exactly.
same. That's
And
that's
all
totally
Michelle would
correct.
have to
Yeah.
do is pretend nothing happened,
Yep.
and she's just targeting Haley now because that's just what she does.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it could just be a repeat where she gets, like you said, a gang of 6 girls or whatever, just pick on Haley, and it's
Yep,
the exact
simple as
same
that.
sort of scenario is
Yeah.
playing out. But I mean, I guess like the what we're sort of left with is that like the wedgies and stuff they don't, and the bullying, it doesn't matter as much because you're not alone anymore. She has a
Mhm,
friend. There's something more important than like that stuff
mhm.
now in
I
the
guess
story.
yeah. I guess the issue that I have with it then is that it didn't end with enough of a bang. Like,
Yeah,
it ends in a way I don't think quite suits everything that happened before. This feels like it would be the ending, like the culmination to a story that doesn't have constant action or like, oh,
yeah,
constantly building toward that, things constantly going on like this
yes,
story does. It should
quick
have been
resolution. Yeah,
ratcheted up a little bit.
for sure. Yeah, it's a quick resolution, and as you said, it's sort of quick arc to becoming evil. Like that's you if you're gonna look at like parts where again the story could do more and things, it's gonna be in those sort of moments where it's like the arc for her to turn and the resolution and the combat, like the final big confrontation that you're building up to, like these could all have been fleshed out more in like a
Yeah.
longer story, a story that gives more or that like the perfect wedgie. The problem too is like it's been built up so much. So like
Yeah.
the expectations are going to be really high and it's
Mhm.
difficult to ever match that or meet that kind of expectation
And
in
that's
any
the
way.
but you have full control over how much is built up, and he knew
Yeah,
what he
it's true.
knows what he's doing. He's very intentional with what
Absolutely.
he does, so he
Absolutely.
knows how much he's building it up. So,
Absolutely.
you feel you kinda I don't wanna say obligated, but I mean, on some level, you
Yeah,
kinda
you're gonna be
have to pay off
disappointed.
those.
Yeah, you're gonna be disappointed as readers,
Yeah.
if you to see like, well, that's I don't know if that's perfect.
Yeah. That's I it wasn't even a matter of, like I looked at it as, like, was that really perfect? I don't know. It wasn't really me questioning, it was more like, "That's not perfect, come
Yeah,
on."
yeah, exactly. A very harsh reaction to that.
And I
Understandable.
think it might be very cliche, but the only difference that needed to happen, put a crowd of people in there to witness it.
Yeah.
It could have been as simple as they start out where nobody is around, and then other people walking through or fighting right by, hear the struggle going on, they look in and like, "Oh shit, it's Michelle
Yeah,
fighting
yeah. Fighting,
Haley."
yeah. And she knocked her
And then
out. The big
it's
bad bully goes
yeah,
down. Yeah,
like,
100%.
what's,
100%.
I had like the end of Harry Potter.
Yes, yeah, for
Every
sure.
you could have all the other wizards and witches slinging spells and fighting in the back while it's happening, but
Yeah,
they're sitting back and watching because this is the end.
yes.
Anybody else does not matter. This is what is going. This is how it resolves.
Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean, the Death Eaters, presumably, some of them are just there out of fear. Like they're loyal, but it's like when their leader goes,
Absolutely.
like that's it.
Not even presumably. It is very pretty much
Yeah.
outright shown in multiple of the Death Reader gatherings.
Yes. So again, like, you would get that if there was a crowd. And the thing with a crowd, which would have been very interesting and a very different ending was if the scene plays out similarly and Hailey announces to the world she has a wedgie fetish, which we've never really seen in a story. Fetish
Mm,
is always a very secretive part
that's
of a
true.
character, unless they're like a comedically degree like open with it. Like these characters in like a you wedgie a girl type story who are just very much like the fetish is their personality. But
Yeah.
even then, it's not something that like a wide group knows. Like the protagonist will learn very quickly. Some small group of people might, like friend sessions, the world doesn't know their fetish. You know, YW and R, like very small groups of people like learn these things. So
Mhm.
like that's never really been seen where it's like that pride is something she wears outwardly to the world. Like she has it with Sylvia. That's it. Like at
Yeah.
the story. So it's a step and a majorly significant one.
Mhm.
But and it would have been like a pretty wild ending if like everybody sees that. And I mean you could even write it to the point where it's like the natural conclusion is like, cause Sylvia asks her, like, were you getting off to like all that bullying and stuff? And like some people would be like, well, I'm not gonna wedgie her, she's gonna like it, or I don't want to get wedgied by her, and like maybe there's like a curbing of the wedgies, cause it's like, oh, Haley's into it, and like that's a line we don't want to cross. You know,
I don't
who
know,
knows?
'cause I
Who knows?
maybe I feel like that would kinda make her a target, and it'd be so easy to make fun of her at that point, like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I
yeah,
bet you're loving this wedgie,
yes.
fucking
That would,
loser."
yeah. That's
So
that
it'd be
totally.
so
They could
easy.
go that way too. So like, and that would be where they end it, where it's like, nothing really changes. I'm still gonna get bullied,
Exactly.
kind of thing. But so like, but we don't get any of that. It's
Yeah. I guess ultimately it comes down to what Magni wanted to do with it. He decided to go
yeah,
that way, and that's
exactly.
fine.
Yeah, for sure. It is a lighter sort of take. It is this kind of not as satisfying, not as sort of fully developed as like an ending or like an arc, like you said. But we get like, the idea that like she stood up to the big bully and like,
Yeah.
what that exactly means is, less clear, but she stood up to the big bully. She's no longer afraid to sort of do the right thing when it matters. So like
Yeah.
there's like it's less of a higher stakes, like, Michelle's no longer the top dog as it is like Haley's a better person and we get to see that, you know. So in that
Yeah.
way, like the story that's always been very like about Haley like remains like with her in the center focus.
Yeah, I mean, I think the lesson she learns really by the end of it is that she learns to reconnect with who she was at the very beginning of the story,
Yeah,
and she basically just gains some steel on herself,
for
so
sure.
that she can't so easily slip into the dark path she was going down before.
Totally. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now the chapter 5 references are Atlanta by Black Ryle, Sandra Shevel by Cicada, Daniela by Hans, Kate by Radical332, a humanized version of Pandora by Psychopony999, Sapphire by Number 39 Utopia. Gee, I wonder if they're a Yu-Gi-Oh fan. And Peyton by Bloom225. Some very heavy hitters at the very end. I like that. It's like he was saving them for the very end because he knew it was the final chapter, so he wanted to
Totally.
make sure he got some of the biggest characters throughout.
Yeah. Keeps people reading. Is my character gonna be
Mhm.
in it?
Yeah. So now that we've reached the end of the main story, let's talk about Haley and wedgies, as if we haven't already the entire time. But like I said before, I really like what Magni does with Haley in the beginning of chapter 5. But I don't know if I can buy that the person who had been constantly on the receiving end of brutal bullying for years, especially wedgies, and wants to protect everyone from the evil scourge that is wedgies, would actually be into them.
Interesting.
I don't I mean, there are some very background hints, like Haley walking in on herself, giving her Haley Taylor walking on Haley, giving herself wedgies.
It's Sylvia,
Um,
right? Who walks in, or
oh,
oh
is
no,
it?
was
No, it
it
is
is it
Taylor.
Taylor? Is it Taylor? Yeah,
It
they
is
walk in.
Taylor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That was a
and she
more
says,
obvious one. That was
I'm
one of the most obvious hints.
yeah, I'm
But
I'm
there's more background ones than
when
that.
I
That's
was
one of the most
when I
obvious.
was reading it, and when I got to that point when Taylor walked in on Haley, I
Yeah,
was thinking, I mean, if she is actually trying to build up the like I said, I didn't really buy that she was doing that just to build up
yeah.
a tolerance, but if she really was, then I could see it as she just didn't want to be turned into a superheroine in a Saseda Wedgie story, but reading the description of chapter 5, Magni says it what or whichever chapter that was, he says that it was actually a moment referencing chapter it was a description of chapter 5. Magni says that, that was a moment referencing Haley's wedgie fetish, and,
Yeah, it was. That
I mean,
was one of the most obvious hints. Yeah,
Haley
that
does stutter a bit also coming with the reason, and he also said that after the 3-month time skip, Haley is wearing a pair of stretched out underwear despite not dealing with any bullies for those 3 months, which I guess is a
I
fair
was
enough
right.
clue,
I didn't even catch
but
that reference. Yeah, I didn't catch. I mean, his description, but I caught that reference because there's a stretched out pair of pink heart panties, and I was like, that's an
right.
even more obvious hint
But I
than when we get right in the beginning, because she's like a little shaky and she's speaking like elliptically after this like first wedgie she gets, and you could see that as she's just dazed, or you could see it as she's kind of flustered and like turned on by that very first one. She doesn't want to show it. But that second one, yeah, where she's wearing this stretched out pair of pink heart panties when Taylor lifts the blanket off her. She's woken up. That's their first day of school 3 months later. The only reason her pair would be stretched is if she did it to herself, was a note that
I
it
don't
made. So
because
that
I
clue was there the whole time and none
the
of us
thing with
caught it.
the thing with that clue specifically is that we don't know how much they were stretched. So I wrote it off as just a natural wedgie that happens during the night.
Yeah, and that's what you're supposed to think. So that's why
So
none of us caught that
and
very subtle hint.
I there are if you really look at it, yeah, I could maybe see you thinking there's
It's a clue. It's a
she
good
has,
clue for
but
sure.
I
I
don't
would
think
never
it's
catch it
enough.
from that. When you read the story back and you read that, you go, "That's a clue." But the first time reading
Yeah.
it, you don't catch it. So that's
I
what I'm saying. That one you realize is a subtle clue and a good one, compared to like she walks in, she's giving herself a wedgie. You read that a second time, you're like, "Wow, he's giving it away." Like at that point,
yeah,
he's giving it
I
away.
don't want it to be like that is the only conclusion that you could come to by the end of the story is that she has a fetish. That would be not good writing.
No,
But
you don't catch
if
it. That's the thing.
no,
We did
I
not see
wish
it
there was
coming.
I wish there was some kind of thing, like some kind of detail that made you brought it into the realm of possibility rather than I guess the style of the subtlety of the hints that he uses is too subtle for me.
Some of them are really good clues, like hints like that one. But you're right. Like you could look at that and you could say, "Oh, I assume it's just natural," which is what you want to think. Like
exactly.
he plays with the expectations in that one,
I guess
and with the tolerance thing, it's same thing. We readers are programmed to think that's a normal approach. It's not. It's like a hint you have a wedgie fish. So like he plays with that. So in that
yeah.
way, it's good. And like there's some more obvious clues. There's the music where the line is like "freak like me." Like again, that's a clue that she's a freak and there's a wedge fetish. But like it's
Yeah,
stuff you're never gonna catch until you reread it and you're like, these are clues. Or if you'd say you don't believe they're clues, you say they could be clues
yeah, I
for the
guess
story.
because there are quite I guess when you really look at it, there are a number of clues, but I guess the problem that I have then is the amount of times that I ran into something like that, and I had an explanation. I thought of a reason why is very plausible, makes a lot of sense. And then once I find out at the very end she has a wedgie fetish, the amount of mental reframing and restructuring that I have to do for
Yeah.
that to work and make sense is too much for me.
Yeah, you're right. Because with the point you made, the first thing you said about how the fact she's gone through so much and like she still likes them, that's a fair question. And
Yes.
I think a very good point to bring up. I mean, obviously, we still to this day don't know how fetishes are formed. There's some people who get off
Mhm.
on the domination submission aspect of wedgies. That's a pretty core element. So maybe that's her, Like she has a similar experience to a lot of fetishists with seeing these cartoons. So you can it's sort of implied that that's kind of where the fetish starts, and she's sort of like, her first exposure to them is there. And then, like, yeah, from there, after years of getting wedgies, really intense ones, like, what's that going to look like for her? And is she still going to view them the same way? Like, when they're, like, are they going to taint it? And we don't really get a full sense of that. That's never explored. She's still giving them to herself. She's still doing this stuff and hiding it and things. But, like, it's not ever made clear to us that, like, this twist is, like, coming. When you reread it, you can go back and say, "Oh yeah, these must have been clues," but they're not something you're expecting, and that, as a reader, it could be jarring. And it sounds like that's what you're talking about. It's just like,
Yeah.
in a way, not what I shouldn't say signed up for, but it is just like a jarring revelation, and maybe in
Yeah.
some ways unsatisfying. Maybe is maybe what you're saying.
It is really this ending twist fights so hard against the anchoring fallacy.
Mm,
Are you
okay.
aware what that is?
No, what's that?
Essentially, when you're when you're exposed to some information for the first time, like if I were to tell you, all underwear is pink,
Mhm.
just as an example.
Yes.
That's the very first thing you've ever heard about the topic, and so you latch onto that, taking it as truth.
Yes.
Then somebody else comes along and says, "Oh, but some underwear is white." Then you're gonna be you'll part of your brain will automatically defend what you were exposed to first, even if
Hmm.
it's not correct.
I see.
That's what I think this ending twist is has to contend with, and I don't think it, um, succeeds for everybody. The
Okay.
anchoring
Yeah.
fallacy is extremely strong, and it is very difficult to break out of that, and some video games take very strong advantage of it in their story writing, like Baldur's Gate, but yeah, I think that is the true problem I have. I guess not really a problem, but dissonance I have with the twist.
Yeah, I think it's a fair critique because, like, you have those hints, but like you said, they're subtle, and it does change a lot about the character, and he sort of lampshades it, where it's kind of like, were you getting off to all that? And it's just kind of written off and not really explored, and there's things like that, and in a way, it is a love letter to the community. It is because she's one
Mhm.
of us, and
Yeah,
so I'm always gonna like it for that angle.
and
But yeah, at the same time, certainly, like, it's gonna be a twist that, like, we don't see coming. Like, nobody saw that twist coming. And those hints, because they're so subtle, because they play so much on our expectations as a community, like, expertly, you're not gonna see it coming. It's gonna throw you completely. And that's for better or for worse, because, like, a twist, you don't always want a twist. Sometimes a twist, you don't need it, and it's just gonna really change things. And as you said, you're gonna have readers who are just like trying to wrap your head around, how does everything I read make sense if this is true, kind of thing. And certainly, for sure, that you could have that in this story.
absolutely. But ultimately, my personal uh, issues or what have you with the actual twist itself, I agree. At having finished it and having really poured through it with you, broken it down, I agree with you. I find it to be a love letter, but in a different way. In that Haley's character arc is only fully realized once she accepts that she has
Yes.
which is so validating to anybody struggling with this
Yep.
aspect of ourselves.
100%. 100%.
That's rather than treating it as some shameful thing and
Yep.
like a corrupting force,
Yes.
as so many other stories have,
Yes.
purely evil, purely corrupting.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
This
you know, you
story
you
shows it
referenced
on both
Jake and
sides, but
Gwen, it's like,
ends on
you know,
yes,
and it's
absolutely,
like
Jake and Gwen.
wedgies are not good. Like they are a very painful thing. They are done to dominate. They are very taboo and
And
like
they
the,
twist people into
and
doing horrible
yeah,
things.
exactly. And so in all his stories, that's very much like what it is, and like you can't get
Mhm.
away from that in any of
You
his
should be
stories.
ashamed of liking wedgies
Yeah,
is
exactly,
a
exactly.
strong
Like,
message in
you
all
know,
3 of his big stories.
absolutely. And like, but here it's like, no, it is your superpower. Like it's how you
Mm,
take down the big bully. It's how
mm.
by embracing who you are doing the right thing. And like
But I
literally,
really love that that Magni goes the entire story making kinda going back and forth on Wedgie, like, it starts out purely negative, then the good of it slowly comes in until the end where it is a great thing. It God, what was I gonna what was I gonna say? It makes it's not purely good or purely bad. It's just
hmm
it's specific to each person what it means.
yeah,
How the fetish takes hold and how it embodies what you like and all it's
for
specific to
sure.
each person, and this story epitomizes that so well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and we know from the data demographic survey that most fetishists are not happy to have a fetish. They feel shame. They feel, upset about a fetish in general. And this story, it was one of the best jobs of trying to allay that and try to make people feel better about who they are. And
I
that's
think
a beautiful thing.
if it I think the only way it could really do it better is if the entire story we knew the main character had a wedgie fetish and they were
Yeah,
struggling with it,
for
but then
sure.
in the end they had the same kind of character turn as Haley does
Totally.
at the end.
And again, if there's a crowd there, and then you have this like impactful finale where things maybe do change fundamentally and maybe people embrace Haley because they realize she has a
Yes.
fetish and they accept her. Like you could do it that way and
Well,
very different story, but you could go
I
all
would
that
say
way with
not
it.
even that, they embrace her because she has the fetish, they embrace her because it doesn't matter that she
Mm,
has the fetish,
very
because
good.
it's just another part of her.
Very good. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. That I think that would be the perfect validation to
Yeah.
a wedgie fetishist.
Beautiful.
But, to finish out my notes at least, it's time for Which Earth, and it feels so good to come back to this segment after 2 whole years since
Yeah.
the Panty-Born episode with you and Shadow.
Nice.
Now, out of the 4 subgenres of realism I'm about to describe, which do you believe Haley the Bully fits in? Realistic Earth, where Earth is normal as we live it every day. Alternate Earth, where Earth is changed to some degree, mainly centered around wedgies. Idealistic Earth, where Earth is changed to fit the desires of the wedgie community. Or Fantastical Earth, where Earth is changed to be unrecognizable, like Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons.
I would say ideal. I think
Hmm.
pretty clearly, the amount of
Mhm.
wedgies, the proportion of them, the types of wedgies, and even like that conclusion where she's able to use her fetish as like a superpower. That feels idyllic to me in the best way, sort of
Hmm.
possible.
Hmm.
What do you think? Where were you landing?
I was undecided between
Mm,
alternate and idealistic for a while,
yeah,
precisely because of what you said. Um, but I think this ultimately is alternate Earth. And what made the
yeah,
difference is the strong presence of consequences for the character's actions, especially Haley's.
yeah.
She continuously makes mistakes throughout all 5 chapters and seriously pays for each one, which in turn drives her further down the wrong path, creating a vicious cycle which takes her until the very end to conquer. I absolutely love when a story can have the protagonist be the driver of the plot rather than the typical of the villain sitting in the driver's seat and the protagonist simply
Yeah.
reacting to what is being put upon them.
Mm,
Haley's
yeah.
attempts to help people are what drive the plot along. If she wasn't trying to overthrow the status quo, life would continue on as it had at Calypso.
Yep.
And when you look around at the other characters and you see what's going on with them, none of them are enjoying the wedgies either. In my mind, the ideal is people getting everybody getting wedgies, like, and people enjoying them, having a good time with them. um, ha enjoying them on some level,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
nobody
Yeah, well
does
said.
except Haley supposedly
Yeah.
in the background.
Yeah, secretly, yes.
And that one character Daniela gives away to, but
Yes, yes.
yeah, that's what I think.
I like that. Yeah, very well said.
But that doesn't mean you can't think it's idealistic. There's nothing wrong with that. Uh, and I think ultimately this is what sets Haley the Bully story apart from the vast majority of stories in the community. Her character arc is so strong because of the cycle that I described. She tries to help, she fucks up, then she pays for it. She falls a bit to the dark side because of those consequences, and then it repeats. She tries to help again, she fucks up yet again, she pays for it again, she falls again, and it keeps going. And it's so beautiful that her character arc is what drives the plot, and it finishes when her arc finishes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Beautiful.
exactly right. It is, and as you said, just quickly add to something you said, where villains are sometimes driving the plot. You know, it's the old cliche.
Always.
People say villains are more interesting
Exactly,
and
because
things,
they're the
and
drivers of the
they
plot.
are. It's because they're actually doing things, because they have plans
Exactly.
and they have plots and
Yes.
stuff. And I feel like writers in general, especially in books, like it's not as much a problem where the character is just going along and is just like a hapless person. But I mean, I guess you still get that even in big best-selling books and stuff. But yeah, certainly Haley is not that. She's like a little reluctant at times to be a hero, but she steps up. She's trying to do something. She's got a clear plan in mind, and she makes a lot of mistakes along the way, but her heart is always in the right place. Obviously, when she goes to the dark side, that changes, but there's like goals there, and it's very well handled throughout. So it's just
Yeah.
very good storytelling, very good
Mhm.
plotting. It's
Yeah.
like, again, it's just a great story.
Yeah. Honestly, I would say that Haley is much more of a light Yagami than Lisa from Two Worlds.
Yeah, Lisa, who I
She
once
starts
called
out with such
a
great intentions, and then she gets corrupted, but she
yeah.
learns from her mistake, whereas Light does not.
Yes, exactly. What's that one meme term for the character who's just like always prepared and always just ready to go, and like if there's a car they know how to drive it, and if there's a plane they know how to drive it. What's that? Jane
Uh,
something?
uh,
Something Jane or
oh,
something. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah.
I once
A
called
Mary
Lisa
Sue.
that. Mary Sue, that's right. I once called
Yes.
Lisa that, and AP was not too impressed. But I still feel it's accurate
Yeah,
description of her, because
absolutely.
especially in like friend sessions later parts, she's just like a million steps ahead of
Yeah.
everything, and it's to an inhuman degree, and obviously that's very Death Note, and obviously was his like main
Yes.
inspiration for the character and the story and stuff.
Yeah.
But like I've always said to him, and I don't think he agreed, but it's like, to me that's boring when someone's that cartoonily like
Honestly,
intelligent.
I don't know.
And,
I
like,
think
it
it's
can
kind
be
of fun
fun to
sometimes.
see, like, but, like, to the point where, like, Death Note obviously got memed on for being like that, where, like, eating a chip is obviously, like, is the most dramatic thing in the world, and that's the obvious example, but, like, people are into that because you haven't seen it before, and I get
It's
that,
so
and, like,
good.
if you haven't seen that, it's really cool, but at a certain point, when you see, like, real, like, humans who, like, I made a mistake, like, I did something terrible, and I maybe kept doing terrible things, and I'm not some super 1 million IQ mastermind, like, there's something beyond fascinating in that. Like,
Yeah,
it's something
absolutely.
that's next level on that. But you don't
Absolutely.
see that a lot too, like, to be fair, and, like, that's harder to see. So, like, when you get, like, a Light Yagami or some of these, like, characters in anime especially who are just, like, a million steps ahead grandmaster types, you're just like, whoa, this is really cool, like, and it is for sure, but a
I
part of
will
me is always going to be like, just give me like the super deep, like, real people who are struggling with something, like, that's what I want to see.
100%. Yeah, but there are times and, like, I
Yes.
fucking love there's you can't replace
Yeah,
the first half of Death Note, the
it's
Battle of
true.
Light and and
It's true.
there's a video I'll send you of, have you ever heard of the YouTube channel Mother's Basement?
No.
I don't really know too much about it, I've seen a couple of his videos, but, basically does anime breakdowns and analyses and that type of thing. And he does one of the Death Note chip scene of the anime, and it is really good. It's the scene itself is in universe. It's fucking ridiculous and stupid. How ridiculously hyper intense it is.
Mhm.
I love it for that, but the meta aspects, like the production of it is
Yeah.
so masterfully done.
Oh, for sure. It's
And
a
the
meme for
detail,
a
like the
reason. Yeah.
writing, the writing of
Yeah.
it is so good. So check out that video.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
yeah, uh, is there anything else that you'd like to discuss?
No, I mean, we were exhaustive in our notes, I
Yes, of
think,
course.
like, it's, I love Michelle. I mean, the number of references is astounding. Even the anime panties reference, or I like anime stories. Again, like you said, not a very natural thing for someone to say, but fun. And it's just such a delight. I think a story everybody should read for all the reasons we listed and many more. And I'm just, hopeful we get more sort of love letters like that in the community, and just more great stories that can inspire, writers in the future generation like this one, I think, means to do.
100%, 100%. This is definitely required reading.
Yes,
It's
for sure.
going on the syllabus.
Going on a syllabus. I had the same thought. Beautiful.
Uh, do you have anything you'd like to promote?
Well, I'm working on a novel that's finished now. It's called
Mm,
Murder's a Stretch.
yes.
It's a murder mystery wedgie story, a whodunit in very classic Agatha Christie golden age mystery for fans of mystery. Some of those words will make sense. It's, not too dark or heavy on violence or anything like that for people who are concerned, but I'm very, very proud of this story. I'm working on getting some art, and I'm hoping to have it out very soon. And I hope to be back on this, my favorite podcast, to chat in insane amounts of detail about it, because it's the most complicated, most complex thing, most difficult thing I ever worked on, and in some ways the one I'm most proud of. So I'm looking forward to that, to be out in the world.
Yes, we're definitely having an exhaustive conversation about it. I'm probably gonna have to reread it. I think I'm gonna read it a couple times before we do
Yeah,
the
it is a
episode. So
mystery. I'm excited
it's
to see if
probably
you
gonna
get the twist, if you figure
I
out
hope so.
who done it, and if you don't, even better. But if you do,
Exactly.
as long as it's a fair play mystery, I don't know if I said that. So like, you should be able to, hopefully, if I did a good job, figure it out. But I'm hoping you
Mm.
don't. I'm hoping you
Yeah,
don't,
that's
really.
that's what I want the mystery to remain a mystery until it's revealed to me.
Exactly. That's my hope, that I can pull that off. And you,
Yeah.
because you get to read an advance copy, and all the readers, when they get to see it, hopefully
Yeah.
they tell me if they
I
figured
mean,
it out. And I'm hoping you can, but I'm hoping you don't. That's my hope.
yeah, I mean, in I'm hoping I'll be able to finish it by the time that it's released, but with my busy fucking schedule, who knows?
I hope you
If
can. I hope you can read it soon and let me know. But I'm hoping to get it out soon, and I'm going to try like some very light monetization using like
Yeah.
Ko-fi, that site. I'm gonna try and just let people know, if you want to support me on there, you don't have to. I'm gonna be posting, I think, serially all the chapters, like probably every week, and then
Mm,
at the end I'll put out the whole thing in a PDF for people to read with the art and the cover, if you prefer to read it that way, or if you want both. But to give them the option, because the thing is, DA, unlike like a YouTube or something, there's no passive monetization for writers. There's no systems there. So
that's not
in the
entirely true.
past,
I think there are, like, private galleries and types of things
that's
you can
true. That's
kind
true.
of take advantage of.
That's true. When I say passive, I mean you can't just put something up there and get money back. You have to do like
Hmm,
work
yeah.
and things. And so I'm trying out like this Ko-fi system. Obviously, I monetized before successfully, but this, I want everybody to read it. I want to get as many people reading as I can. I don't really want to charge for stuff still, kind of.
Mm,
If I don't have to, and even some of the stuff I've charged for, we've also given away for free, like Aurora Protocol, Stallion Knife. These things are, all out there for people to read as well. And obviously, the support we get, the money is obviously so nice and so
of course.
generous. So I'm hoping we get something like that. To get, if I can make a few bucks, great. But really, the goal is like to have written a mystery that I'm really proud of, and I hope people really enjoy it. and enjoy the characters. They like the twist and everything. I just made this about me. I apologize, but I'm very, very, very excited about it, and for everybody to read. Murder is a stretch.
Why are you apologizing? This is the section for you to promote
Oh,
things, aka promote yourself.
thank you very much. Yes, great.
What? Well, yes, very much looking forward to reading it. Yeah, I'm hoping to get through it, but who knows? Uh, I hope I could do it in a reasonable amount of time, but I guess we'll find out. But
Yeah,
anyway, Hans, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure to talk about one of your favorite stories and one that so lovingly references the community. Honestly, this has been probably one of the most fun conversations I've had with you.
amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. Always an honor, my friend. I can't wait to be back as always. I've been your number one fan since day one, and I'm always got your back.
Absolutely. And all the listeners, thank you for listening, and I will see you on the next episode of the Best Book Club. Hopefully, not in another 8 months.